Chapter 101. After Lone Wolf activated his ability, he looked refreshed. His whole body was surrounded by a domineering aura, as if he had control of the whole world. Ning Shu couldn't help but ridicule him in her heart. Looking at Lone Wolf's appearance, he seemed to want to snatch the car, leave her and the uncle behind, and run away. However, he was very afraid of the gun in the uncle's hand, but his attitude was high and mighty. He gave her and the uncle less food to eat, which made Ning Shu despise him. Ning Shu was worried for the uncle. Now, she and the uncle were in the same boat. The team continued to walk back. On the way, they encountered a lot of zombies. Lone Wolf killed them all and became more proficient in using his lightning ability. During a zombie siege, young Phoenix also awakened her ability, and it was an ice ability. Not long after, Tarantula also awakened his earth ability. Among the 5 people, only Ning Shu and the school doctor hadn't awakened their abilities. They felt like the 2 of them were the odd ones out. Ning Shu didn't know why she couldn't activate her ability, but her strength was getting stronger and her body was getting lighter and lighter. Obviously, it was due to her peerless martial arts. If she didn't have an ability, then so be it. Ning Shu comforted the school doctor and said, "It's okay, uncle. You will awaken your ability one day." The school doctor rolled his eyes at Ning Shu and sneered, "You should worry about yourself. Don't get killed by these people." Ning Shu sighed. The school doctor could defeat everyone with his weapon. If she had a whip in her hand, then her lethality would be greater. "Uncle, why don't we just run away and not stay with these people?" Ning Shu whispered in the school doctor's ear. Ning Shu's hot breath blew on the school doctor's ear. The uncle's ear moved and moved to the side. "I hate it when you get so close. Can't we talk properly?" Ning Shu's face collapsed. "Uncle, we are discussing important things. Don't worry about these details." "Oh," the uncle said. "But now the other 3 have awakened their abilities. It's because they've all awakened that we have to run." Ning Shu said anxiously, "The 2 of us can't beat them." "No." The uncle refused. Ning Shu opened his eyes wide and asked, "Why?" "These are 3 good materials," the uncle said. Ning Shu, what did the uncle mean by this? Was he going to dissect those 3 people like a madman? Ning Shu really wanted to shake the uncle's body and beg him to give up such a ridiculous idea. "Here, this is your dinner." Young Phoenix threw a box of biscuits and a bottle of water on the ground in front of the school doctor and Ning Shu. The water bottle and the biscuit bag were covered with dust. Fortunately, they were still unopened. Otherwise, how could anyone eat them? Ning Shu's mouth twitched. Previously, young Phoenix was still a little interested in the school doctor, but after Lone Wolf and she awakened their abilities, her attitude changed. The female lead probably felt that only the strong were worthy of her. Besides, she was also a strong person. The uncle without any abilities really had no advantage. Young Phoenix threw the things down and left, leaving the 2 of them with a noble and cold back view. The uncle held his glasses and raised his eyebrows as he looked at young Phoenix's back. Ning Shu picked up the biscuits and water bottle on the ground, patted the dust on them, and said to the uncle, "Don't look, she doesn't like you now." The apocalypse was reality. The school doctor didn't say anything. He supported his chin with his hand and looked at Ning Shu. His expression was very lazy, and he said indifferently, "I don't understand what you are talking about." Ning Shu snorted and pretended to be innocent. He didn't believe that the uncle didn't know that young Phoenix was interested in him before. Ning Shu tore open the biscuits, wrung out the water bottle, and handed it to the uncle. He said, "Uncle, eat first. Leave some for me." The uncle took the water bottle, drank a mouthful of water, ate some biscuits, and then gave the water bottle to Ning Shu. Ning Shu didn't avoid the uncle's leftover water and ate the biscuits. The school doctor saw that Ning Shu was enjoying the biscuits and sneered. He said, "Eating my leftovers, do you have to be so happy? PFFF. Cough cough. Ning Shu hit his chest. Damn, he choked again. Who the hell liked to eat other people's leftovers? It was the uncle's fastidious habit that really made people's balls hurt. If she ate first, the uncle wouldn't even touch it, but young Phoenix only gave them so little to eat. She didn't mind, as long as they could eat their fill. She was despised by the school doctor again. The school doctor reached out his hand and patted Ning Shu's back. He seemed to feel that Ning Shu's back was a little dirty. Then, he wiped the dust off his hand on Ning Shu's body and withdrew his hand. Ning Shu was speechless. The next morning, young Phoenix came to inform the school doctor and Ning Shu that they were ready to leave. The school doctor was still the driver. Lone Wolf and the others were already waiting in the car. Their faces were long and they were in an extremely bad mood. The reason why Lone Wolf didn't do anything to the school doctor was that they couldn't drive the car. The most terrifying thing was the bomb that the school doctor mentioned. Lone Wolf looked at the school doctor and Ning Shu. So when he faced Ning Shu and the school doctor, his face was full of disdain and arrogance. It was as if letting them live was a great gift. Ning Shu directly ignored Lone Wolf's expression and turned a deaf ear to Tarantula's ridicule. Her skin was extremely thick. Along the way, they encountered a lot of zombies. Finally, they reached the city. It wasn't as desolate as before. The group passed by a city and found that there was no one in the city except for zombies. Originally, they wanted to find some food but found that the supermarket was basically empty. This gave people a very bad feeling. Ning Shu thought that the country had collapsed and all the people were gathered in the base. Fuck, the country was gone. Who should she give the gene fluid to? Ning Shu was deeply depressed. It was already late. The group found a small district to stay in. Some of the wandering zombies in the corridor were killed by them. Ning Shu turned on the tap. There was water, but she didn't know if it was drinkable. Forget it, it was better not to drink. The virus had destroyed the whole world. Even the water source had become muddy. Ning Shu looked at the school doctor. This was really a sin. Uncle! Ning Shu shouted. The school doctor looked at Ning Shu indifferently. What's the matter? Ning Shu grabbed the school doctor's hand and earnestly said, Uncle, you should give up on young Phoenix. The two of us should run away. There are a lot of abandoned cars in the city. Lone Wolf doesn't need you anymore. Didn't he see that after entering the city, Lone Wolf looked at her and the school doctor's eyes with undisguised killing intent? It was already like this and the uncle was still thinking about young Phoenix. The school doctor looked down at his hand that was held by Ning Shu. He pulled his hand back and said, Your hand is so dirty. Wash it. Ning Shu wailed, Uncle. Chapter 102. The thing that made Ning Shu the most speechless was that she was clearly telling the uncle a very serious matter, but the uncle always made Ning Shu very angry. Uncle. Ning Shu shouted weakly, I'm worried to death, Uncle. The school doctor looked at Ning Shu with his chin in his hand. Looking at her twisted face, he said lazily, I don't know why you're so grumpy all day. Girl, can't you be good? Ning Shu was speechless. Damn, the uncle still despised her. Haha. The team continued to move forward and finally found a base where humans were gathered. There were many people gathered at the entrance of the base. After walking for so long, they suddenly saw so many people and felt so excited. Ning Shu followed behind the school doctor and waited at the entrance to enter the base. The first thing they did when they entered the base was to take a shower. Lone Wolf and young Phoenix were in front of the line. The people at the base registration looked at the others with a superior look. When it was Lone Wolf's turn, they asked, What's your name? How old are you? Have you awakened your ability? Lone Wolf didn't say anything. Lightning flashed in his hands, and crackling sounds could be heard. The scene looked particularly cool. Lightning ability, it's actually a lightning ability. The person at the registration stood up and looked at the ability in Lone Wolf's hand excitedly. His face became respectful and asked, "May I ask, what's your name? So that the base can arrange a place for you to live." The surrounding people looked at Lone Wolf with envy, jealousy, and hatred. Ability users had better resources and a better quality of life. Those who didn't awaken their abilities could only be inferior people. Their lives were very difficult and they could only do some dirty work in the base. Lone Wolf, 28 years old, lightning ability. Lone Wolf said indifferently, looking particularly noble and cold. Next was young Phoenix. Her ice ability also caused a commotion. Tarantula got his room key and the wood ability of Tarantula. Tarantula got his room key and turned his head to Ning Shu and made a throat-slitting gesture. Ning Shu shot a glance at the tarantula. She didn't know what she had done to offend this guy to make him hate her so much. When it was the school doctor's turn, Ning Shu had always wanted to know his name. The registrar looked at him and asked, "What's your name? What's your superpower?" "Lunatic," the school doctor said. Pft, cough cough. Ning Shu hammered his chest. How could he say his code name so bluntly? The registrar obviously didn't know who Madman was. When he heard the name, he coldly looked at the uncle and said, "I'm talking about the name. Your name is Madman." "Okay." The school doctor answered with a serious face. "What special ability?" The school doctor shook his head. "No superpower. If you don't have a special ability, then you're an inferior person," the registrar said coldly. The school doctor stood aside and waited for Ning Shu. When it was Ning Shu's turn, Ning Shu said directly, "Little flower, no superpower." The registrar shook his head and said disappointedly, "Another inferior person." Ning Shu was speechless. Ning Shu walked to the school doctor's side and asked, "Uncle, what should we do now? We're inferior people. We don't even have a place to live." It was good enough that the base could take them in. They would only give them some simple things or live in a shabby house with many people. Lone Wolf and young Phoenix had already left. They had better accommodation and supplies. But Ning Shu and the uncle were more miserable. The uncle didn't care and walked into the base. Ning Shu hurriedly followed behind him. "Wait for me here. I have something to do. Wait for me here. Don't run around. Wait for me to come back." The school doctor said to Ning Shu and turned to leave. Ning Shu obediently waited for the uncle to come back. Then, she observed the surrounding environment. The people who passed by her were in two states. One was dead and lifeless. Their faces were gray, as if they could not see any future. They were like walking corpses. One type was people who exuded a powerful aura. Half of these people had awakened their special abilities, and their faces were filled with complacency. These people who had awakened their special abilities looked at Ning Shu. They were sizing up Ning Shu as if to determine whether he was the same kind or inferior. "Little flower?" A puzzled voice sounded. Ning Shu turned and saw a man in military uniform walking over. He looked at Ning Shu and said with surprise, "You're still alive." Ning Shu knew from the original owner's memory that this middle-aged man in military uniform was the officer of the special agent team. When Ning Shu saw the officer, he was surprised and surprised. He saluted him. "Sir. Where are the others?" The officer looked at Little Flower. Ning Shu said, "Lone Wolf and the others have returned. 2 people were sacrificed." The officer looked at Ning Shu with a rare kindness in his eyes. He sighed and said, "Not long after you left, the country also collapsed." Ning Shu didn't know what to say. He thought about it and gave the gene fluid to the officer. "This is the gene fluid I got. Lone Wolf and the others don't know about it." The officer shook his head and said, "Keep this gene fluid. Have you awakened your special ability? Now that humans can awaken their special abilities, the gene fluid doesn't have much use. If you haven't awakened your special ability, use the gene fluid. The officer looked melancholy. The apocalypse is cruel. You have to protect yourself. When Ning Shu heard this, she sighed in her heart. This man had taken the original owner out of the orphanage, raised her up, and taught her skills. In the original owner's heart, he was probably the most important person in her life. Sir, this gene fluid is for you. This is Little Flower's first mission. Little Flower wants to complete the mission given by you. Ning Shu said seriously and gave the gene fluid to the officer. The officer didn't say anything. He took the gene fluid and asked, "Do you have a place to stay now?" Ning Shu shook his head and said, "Not yet. I don't know where to stay. I'll arrange a place for you," the officer said. Ning Shu was about to nod when he heard the school doctor's voice. Little Flower. Ning Shu and the officer looked at the school doctor. The school doctor was walking towards them. He was wearing a black windbreaker. When he walked over, everything was blurred. They could only see the school doctor walking towards them. Soon, the school doctor was in front of Ning Shu. Ning Shu introduced him. "Uncle, this is my officer." The school doctor looked at the smile on Ning Shu's face indifferently. He reached out his hand to shake the officer's hand and said, "Hello." The senior officer looked at the school doctor and scanned his face. He frowned and looked puzzled. "You look familiar." The school doctor didn't say anything. Ning Shu raised the key in his hand and said, "I found a place to stay." Chapter 103. Ning Shu saw the school doctor walk around and find a place to stay. Ning Shu looked at the key in the school doctor's hand and said to him, "Uncle, I found a place to stay." The officer said he would find a place for me to stay. The officer was a trustworthy person. To the original owner, the officer was like a father. So when Ning Shu saw the officer, he couldn't help but want to get close to him. The school doctor raised his eyebrows and looked at the middle-aged officer. "You found a place for this girl?" Before the officer could speak, the school doctor said to Ning Shu, "This room is the best in the base." Ning Shu blinked and said, "Thank you, uncle." Since they were already at the base, Ning Shu felt that he shouldn't trouble the uncle. The uncle had helped him a lot along the way. The leader of the special agent group patted Ning Shu's shoulder and said, "Since you already have a partner, then follow your partner. Although I'm one of the higher-ups in the base, it's not good for me to show favoritism. The apocalypse is cruel. It's good to have someone you can rely on." The officer walked away with his hands behind his back. Just like that, he left. Ning Shu turned his head stiffly and said to the school doctor awkwardly, "My officer is quite humorous." The school doctor held the key and looked at Ning Shu. He sneered and said, "Useless. Let's go." The school doctor said to Ning Shu and turned to leave. Ning Shu's face twisted as she followed behind the school doctor. When they arrived at the residential building, the house was indeed quite nice. "Uncle, how did you get this room?" Ning Shu asked. When they reached the door, the uncle opened it and glanced at Ning Shu. "You want to know?" Can't I say?" Ning Shu's mind immediately conjured up the scene of killing and robbing. This kind of thing was too common in the post-apocalyptic world. The strong were the truth. Ning Shu and the uncle were still talking when the door beside them opened. A person walked out from inside. They looked at each other and were quite surprised. Ning Shu was surprised by the uncle's ability to choose a room next to the female leads. But young Phoenix was surprised by the fact that two lowly people without abilities were staying here. Young Phoenix sized up Ning Shu and the school doctor and asked, "Why are you here?" Ning Shu shrugged her shoulders. She didn't know why she was here. Seeing young Phoenix's expression as if she had swallowed a fly, Ning Shu was puzzled. Why couldn't she and uncle come here? Young Phoenix's expression made it seem as if they had sullied her. The school doctor glanced at young Phoenix indifferently. He pulled Ning Shu's arm and pulled Ning Shu into the house. Then, he slammed the door shut, making young Phoenix angry and hateful. He was just a lowly person without abilities. That man had ignored her before. Now that she had awakened her ability, that man still ignored her. To put it bluntly, young Phoenix felt that her charm had been thwarted by the school doctor, so she resented him. Why don't you like me? What qualifications do you have to not like me? Young Phoenix's heart was full of resentment. Ning Shu sized up the room. Before the apocalypse, this kind of room could only be considered ordinary. The room was not very big, at most 70 or 80 square meters. But now, this kind of room was really good. It could even be considered a mansion. After all, the base was only so big, but there were so many people gathered here. It was even more valuable to have a private room. Ning Shu was even more curious about how this room came about. I'm going to take a shower, Ning Shu said and went into the bathroom. The door was a little low, so the school doctor had to lower his head when he went in. Ning Shu nodded and cleaned the room. He then wiped his sweat and heard the sound of the bathroom door opening. He turned around and saw the school doctor coming out of the bathroom. Ning Shu quickly covered his nose, afraid that he would have a nosebleed. The school doctor came out with a bath towel wrapped around his waist. The towel was loosely wrapped around his body, and his Apollo's belt was exposed. Long legs and a muscular body. Ning Shu's mouth was dry. Although this body was young, uncle, you shouldn't be so casual. The school doctor used a handkerchief to wipe his wet hair. The wet hair formed a shadow on his forehead, looking blurred and sexy. Ning Shu was speechless. Fuck, I really want to pounce on this person. The school doctor saw Ning Shu's dazed look and frowned. Why aren't you taking a shower? Do you know that you're dirty? I've been tolerating you for a long time. Ning Shu, it's heartbreaking to say such things to a lady. After all, she was a woman. Although she was young, the school doctor didn't treat her as a woman but as a child. Ning Shu snorted. Although this body was young, his mental age might be older than yours. Ning Shu went to the bathroom to take a shower. There were a lot of bathing items on the counter. Did these all belong to the school doctor? His worldview was refreshed again. The school doctor's obsession with cleanliness had reached the point where both humans and gods hated him. Ning Shu took a comfortable shower and smelled the fragrance. When he came out, he purposely walked a few rounds in front of the school doctor. The school doctor looked at Ning Shu and frowned. You're still so ugly even after you've washed yourself clean. The school doctor's tone was a little strange. Ning Shu felt his knees hurt. Uncle, can't you be more considerate when you speak? It's too hurtful, too vicious. His heart was tired. Do you know how to cook? The school doctor asked Ning Shu. Ning Shu looked at the school doctor with a face full of ignorance. He said shyly, Uncle, I don't know how to cook. The school doctor looked at him with disdain. Aren't you a special agent? If you're in an extreme environment and there's no food, won't you starve to death? I've never seen such a weak special agent. Damn, is the school doctor in dissing mode? He criticized her from her toes to her hair. The conclusion was that she was really a scumbag. In the end, the school doctor saw that Ning Shu didn't care about anything. He put on his clothes and was about to leave. He said, I'm going out to find food. Don't run around. If you get killed, you deserve it. Ning Shu nodded. He wondered if the school doctor was going to rob people again. After a while, the school doctor came back with a bag of things. The way he carried the bag was very handsome. Ning Shu took the bag from him and opened it. It was actually rice. He asked, Where did you find this? Someone gave it to me. The school doctor patted the dust off his clothes and said indifferently. Resources were scarce in the apocalypse. Who would give you things? Cook. The school doctor said to Ning Shu. Ning Shu was dumbfounded. He had spent half his life in the hospital. When he entered the mission world, he had never cooked. Was he going to get a new skill? Chapter 104. In the end, Ning Shu didn't cook. The school doctor looked at Ning Shu's twisted and guilty face and said straightforwardly, cooking is a waste of food. Then the rice was cooked by the uncle. There was also steamed meat. The meat was cut very evenly, as if it was made from the same mold. The uncle's OCD was really a disease. Ning Shu ate the rice mixed with meat and burped. She was so moved that she almost cried. The apocalypse was really torturous. When she was a little princess, she ate all kinds of delicacies, but none of them were as delicious as this rice. Especially when she had eaten so many hardtack biscuits that her taste buds were about to disappear. Now that she was suddenly eating rice and oily meat, Ning Shu even wanted to hug the uncle's thigh without any shame. The uncle didn't eat the meat, but slowly ate the fried vegetables. His movements were slow and elegant, which was a sharp contrast to Ning Shu's ravenous eating. The school doctor frowned and looked at Ning Shu's oily face. He pulled the corner of his mouth and turned his head away. He couldn't bear to look at her. After eating, she put down the bowl and burped. She was very satisfied. She gave the uncle a thumbs up and said, "Uncle, you are quite capable. You can steal cars, dissect people, and even cook." Ning Shu suddenly froze. This was something that happened in the school world. She accidentally blurted it out. Ning Shu looked at the uncle. It seemed that he didn't hear what she said. Ning Shu was relieved. The uncle's ability was great, but his OCD was a bit serious. Also, his tongue was too sharp. It was unbearable. Ning Shu's heart was strong, so she turned a deaf ear to the uncle's sarcasm. The school doctor narrowed his eyes and moved to the side. "Can you wash your face and talk to me again?" Ning Shu was speechless. That was why the uncle was so annoying. Ning Shu went to the washroom to wash her face. Before she was done, she heard a series of urgent and ear-piercing sirens. It was so loud that it almost pierced her eardrums. Ning Shu quickly came out of the bathroom and asked the uncle, "What's wrong?" The uncle frowned and said, "Zombies are coming to attack the base. Take something to defend against the zombies." "Do I have to go too?" Ning Shu pointed at herself and asked. The school doctor rolled his eyes at Ning Shu. "You have to show your value if you accept the base's protection, little girl." Ning Shu looked at the school doctor in surprise. When did the uncle have such an awareness? The sirens were getting louder and louder. The uncle handed Ning Shu a gun and said, "Be careful. Don't rush into the zombie crowd. You don't have a superpower. You can't fight so many zombies even if you have great strength." Uncle's words. Ning Shu, she patted her chest and said, "If there is danger, I will run." The school doctor was speechless. The sirens became more urgent. The uncle and Ning Shu went out the door, and they ran into young Phoenix and Lone Wolf next door. Gu Lang's cold face was full of sarcasm. "A lowly person without a superpower has to fight against zombies. Don't turn into a zombie in the end." The school doctor looked at him coldly. Gu Lang released his superpower and looked at the uncle warily. The uncle snorted and pulled Ning Shu's arm. They walked past Gu Lang and young Phoenix. How domineering. Gu Lang's handsome face was very long. He realized that he, a superpower user, was afraid of a lowly person without a superpower. It was really humiliating. Young Phoenix looked at the school doctor who was wearing a black windbreaker. Although this man did not have any special abilities, he was actually quite charming. However, in this post-apocalyptic world where the strong were respected, charm alone was not enough. One had to have strength. What made young Phoenix angry was that this lowly person without a superpower was so rude to her, but he was so nice to Flower. Flower was not comparable to her. The competitive young Phoenix tasted defeat in front of the school doctor. She was thinking about the uncle and wanted to subdue him to wash away her failure. In short, young Phoenix had the uncle in her heart. Flower's hands were covered in frost. She looked at the back of the school doctor and Ning Shu. What was so good about Flower who had nothing? Ning Shu followed the uncle to the base's entrance. He saw an overwhelming number of zombies rushing towards the base's entrance. The rotten smell made people faint. The base's walls were filled with cannons, bombs, and all kinds of new weapons. They were bombarding the zombies. Although they were lethal, they were not enough compared to the number of zombies. Even the people without superpowers in the base used stools and hose to fight against the zombies. However, the result was tragic. The ordinary people without superpowers were torn apart by the zombies. The zombies did not care about anything else. They tore apart the corpses on the spot. The scene was very bloody. The officer commanded the army to kill the zombies. He turned his head and saw Ning Shu. He frowned. Ning Shu shouted, "What are you doing here?" The sound of artillery shells was very loud. Ning Shu tried hard to hear what the officer said. He then shouted to the officer, "I'm here to fight against the zombies." The officer saw the school doctor next to Ning Shu. He did not say anything and continued to command the army to kill the zombies. There was also an even more dazzling scene, which was the ability users. All kinds of abilities were incomparably gorgeous, and they easily killed the zombies, especially Lone Wolf's lightning ability. When he struck the zombies' heads, the zombies immediately fell down. His destructive power was extremely dazzling. Countless people looked at Lone Wolf with amazement, admiration, and admiration. Lone Wolf felt the eyes of the people around him. His hands moved faster. The lightning in his hands shone brighter. It felt like he was deliberately showing off his skills. Ning Shu retracted his gaze and shot the zombie's head. The school doctor stood beside Ning Shu and did not move. Ning Shu said, "Such a large-scale attack. The zombies behind this are probably not weak. When this kind of zombie comes, you run first. You can't deal with it." The school doctor said lightly. He did not feel ashamed of running away. Ning Shu frowned and asked, "Is it a mutated zombie?" The school doctor nodded. "It is a mutated zombie. But it is stronger than the ones we have encountered before. Zombies evolve much faster than humans." The school doctor placed his hand on the group of paranormals and muttered to himself, "If I can dissect a few paranormals and observe their DNA, the gene fluid should not be just a half-finished product. It should be able to fully activate a person's superpower." Ning Shu was shooting while listening to the school doctor's mumbling. He pointed his ears and asked the school doctor, "Uncle, what are you talking about?" "The zombies are coming," the school doctor said lightly. Ning Shu nodded and began to kill the zombies. Finally, when the zombies were getting closer, Ning Shu directly picked up a long stick or a hoe on the ground and directly hit the zombie's head. Then the zombie's head exploded. Now Ning Shu learned to be smart. When the zombie's head exploded, he immediately moved away to avoid being splashed in the face by the zombie's brain. The school doctor stepped back and watched Ning Shu kill the zombies. He casually killed the zombies that came close to him. The scene was in a stalemate. Everyone was trying their best to kill the zombies to keep themselves alive. Roar, an extremely penetrating roar sounded, and the zombies who heard this roar became even more violent, desperately rushing towards the entrance of the base. More and more people died. The air became more and more turbid. The stench, the smell of blood, the dust. Chapter 105. Roar, another roar was heard. This sound made people's heart beat in disorder, their blood was surging, and they felt extremely dizzy. When the zombies heard this roar, they became restless. It was as if they had been blessed by some kind of power. They were restless and full of energy. Everyone was very uneasy. The officer commanded everyone and shouted, "Return to the base, quickly. Flower, quickly come in." Officer Ning Shu shouted. Ning Shu killed the zombie in front of him with a stick, turned around and ran into the base, standing next to the school doctor. The zombies scratched the base's walls and doors, trying to get in. Looking at the tide of zombies, Ning Shu had goosebumps all over his body. "It's coming," the school doctor said in a low voice. Ning Shu turned his head and saw a black dot. It was growing at a speed visible to the naked eye, moving quickly, and finally floating in the air above the base. This was a zombie. This zombie seemed to be no different from a normal person except for its blue face, and its eyes were moving. Obviously, it was different from ordinary zombies, it obviously had vision. Ning Shu's jaw almost dropped. He turned his neck stiffly, looked at the uncle and stammered, "Uncle, uncle, it can fly." It completely violated Newton's law of gravity. The mutated zombies they encountered before only had good jumping ability and fast speed, but floating in the air like this was simply challenging people's worldview. The uncle squinted his eyes, looked at the zombie floating in the air, and said, "Is it easier to evolve into a zombie?" Such a human-like zombie caused a commotion in the base, especially when it could fly like an immortal. It made the people in the base feel shocked and helpless. This zombie was really too powerful. An atmosphere of despair filled the air, making people's hearts more panicked. "Fuck, I'll fight you." A paranormal released a golden beam of energy towards the zombie, but the zombie didn't even try to dodge. Ning Shu was stunned for a moment. This zombie couldn't be so weak, right? It looked like a cow, but it was about to be hit. The power directly passed through the zombie's body, and people found that the power hit only an afterimage. So where did the zombie go? Ah! A mournful voice sounded, and people turned around to see that the zombie had directly passed through the chest of the paranormal who released the power. The zombie's bloody hand was still holding a beating heart. The zombie's eyes were very cold, and it directly threw the paranormal into the zombie crowd. The zombies below suddenly rioted, tearing the paranormal's body. The mutated zombie floating in the air, biting the bloody heart. Ning Shu stretched his neck and swallowed a mouthful of saliva. This scene was really bloody and disgusting. Everyone felt that their hearts were being gnawed by the zombies. With the previous impulsive unlucky guy as an example, they didn't dare to move for a while, and it was even more impossible to rush. He was simply courting death. There were so many people, but the scene was silent, and the rapid sound of the alarm was more ear-piercing. The mutated zombie gnawed the heart in its hand, and stretched out its tongue to lick the blood at the corner of its mouth. Its eyes looked at the group of paranormal, looking at them as if they were food, and it made people scared. Ning Shu thought that the mutated zombie was more interested in the paranormal who was full of energy. "Uncle, what should we do now?" Ning Shu approached the school doctor uncle. Why were they in a deadlock now? The school doctor uncle stared at the zombie. "What else can we do? Run." Ning Shu was speechless. Although he said that, he didn't dare to move. What if the zombie took out his heart if he moved? Especially the paranormal, these people were the focus of the mutated zombie. The zombie looked at them with a pair of cold and ruthless eyes, as if it was trying to guess the taste of its food, and it was really stressful. "There's no other way, let's go together." Lone Wolf said with a cold face, "Let's go together." As soon as Lone Wolf's voice fell, the paranormal released their powers to attack the mutated zombie, but the zombie was too fast and dodged. Ning Shu was speechless. Zombies were so abnormal, how could they fight against such an invincible existence? However, the culprit was the school doctor uncle standing next to her, but she didn't dare to blame him. The zombie was surrounded by a group of paranormal, and there was always one paranormal that hit him. The zombie roared and looked at the paranormal with red eyes. Although there were so many people fighting the zombie, Lone Wolf and his team didn't have it easy, and they were very embarrassed. The officer ordered people to kill the ordinary zombies, and at the same time, he paid attention to the paranormal situation. Anyone with eyes could see that the paranormal situation was not good. Paranormal was very precious, and the death of one paranormal would cause the base to tremble in pain. Although there were now some people who could activate their powers, the number of paranormal was still very small, and they were a resource that every base fought for. The officer's face was sweating, and the muscles on his face were twitching. Ning Shu looked at him, but there was nothing she could do, because this kind of battle was not something she could intervene in. Ning Shu thought for a moment, and then she picked up the axe and went into the battle circle. She was very fast and strong, so she should be able to fight against the mutated zombie. Although the paranormal had their own powers, their speed and strength might not be as fast as her. Didn't they see that the mutated zombie's strength was its speed and physical strength? Where are you going? The school doctor uncle pulled Ning Shu's arm, raised his eyebrows and asked in surprise. Ning Shu had a hunch that if she said that she was going to kill the zombie, the school doctor uncle would despise her, so she said, "I need to go to the toilet." The school doctor uncle was speechless. "Stay here, if you run over, you will be accidentally injured by the paranormal's power. Don't overestimate yourself." The school doctor uncle said faintly, and then pulled out the gun from his waist, narrowed his eyes and aimed at the zombie. Ning Shu was speechless. The zombie's speed was too fast. "If you can hit the zombie, I will kneel down for you." The uncle pulled the trigger, but he didn't shoot the zombie directly, instead, he shot at a distance from the zombie. Then Ning Shu saw a magical scene, as if the zombie took the initiative to throw itself at the bullet. The zombie was shot. Ning Shu knelt down with a thud. Fuck, how could this happen? The zombie was stunned at first, and then the muscles on its chest trembled, squeezing the bullet out of its body. Ning Shu kowtowed to the ground. Damn it, both of them were so unscientific. But when the zombie squeezed the bullet out, the paranormal released his most powerful power at the same time, hitting the zombie's body. The huge power directly slammed the zombie to the ground, and the huge power seemed to make the ground shake twice, raising a lot of dust. The zombie's clothes were torn, and the places where the power hit its body were so deep that the bones could be seen. It stood there, glancing at the paranormal, and finally stopped at the school doctor uncle. It seemed that the zombie had a deep impression of the human who hit it. Chapter 106. Although the mutant zombie was hit by the superpower, it didn't seem to have any special injuries, which made people feel helpless. The school doctor was very calm under the gaze of the mutant zombie. Ning Shu suspected that the school doctor's facial nerves were damaged because he didn't have any expression. But when he was mocking her, his face was full of disdain. Roar! The mutant zombie roared twice at the school doctor. Everyone thought that the school doctor would be the next one to be cut open, but the mutant zombie turned and flew away. After a while, it turned into a small black dot and disappeared into the horizon. Ning Shu thought, it ran away. Everyone heaved a sigh of relief. Their faces were filled with the lingering fear of surviving a calamity. Young Phoenix looked at the school doctor with a complicated expression. Seeing him calmly pull up Flower, who was kneeling on the ground, young Phoenix did not know why, but her heart burned with jealousy. She was jealous that Flower, who had nothing, had such a man who would not leave her. Lone Wolf stood beside young Phoenix. He saw the resentment, jealousy, and love on young Phoenix's face. He said coldly, "He's just a lowly person with no superpowers. You really think he's a hero with some marksmanship? Young Phoenix, what are you thinking?" Young Phoenix looked away and said to Lone Wolf, "I think he's very mysterious. He makes people feel uneasy. That's why I pay special attention to him." Young Phoenix saw Lone Wolf's expression and explained, "He's just a person with no superpower. He can't survive in this apocalyptic world. I always feel that this man is dangerous. That's why I pay special attention to him. Lone Wolf looked at young Phoenix and said coldly, I hope so. Then he turned and walked away. Young Phoenix frowned and caught up with Lone Wolf. What do you mean? Are you doubting me? If that's the case, why are we still together? You don't even trust me. If that's the case, let's go our separate ways. Young Phoenix walked faster than Lone Wolf and left him with an angry back view. On the other side, Ning Shu was impressed by the school doctor's superb marksmanship. He kept asking the school doctor how he practiced his marksmanship. The school doctor glanced at Ning Shu and said, you can calculate the direction of a person's next move according to their movements. You can estimate the distance between you and the target and the time of arrival of the bullet. This way, the hit rate is very high. The school doctor said it very casually, as if it was a very simple thing. It was no big deal. Ning Shu knelt down with a thud. It was too fucking complicated. How fast was his brain calculating? Ning Shu felt that if it was so complicated, he might as well use an axe and a stick to do it. Don't your knees hurt from kneeling on the ground for no reason? The school doctor looked at Ning Shu with disdain. You're useless. It wasn't painful at first, but after hearing what the uncle said, Ning Shu felt that her knees were going to break. It was painful. Back in the room, the school doctor went to take a shower again. It hadn't been long, and he had to take a shower again. Ning Shu lowered his head and sniffed his collar. After staying with the school doctor for so long, he felt that he was very sloppy. After the school doctor came out of the shower, he was only wrapped in a bath towel. Ning Shu felt his hands itching. He wanted to pull the bath towel off the uncle. It was better not to wear it. Go take a shower. The school doctor said to Ning Shu while wiping his wet hair. I feel good. I don't need to take a shower. Ning Shu said. After the apocalypse, even drinking water was a problem. How could there be so much water to take a shower? There was a little sweat smell, but it was not that unbearable. The school doctor stopped wiping his hair and looked at Ning Shu indifferently. His gaze made Ning Shu's hair stand up. The school doctor crossed his legs. His two slender legs were faintly discernible under the bath towel. Ning Shu tilted his head and looked under the bath towel. It was really annoying. I'm talking to you. The school doctor saw Ning Shu tilting his head and staring blankly. He couldn't help but say, it's okay if you're stupid, but your ears have problems too. You can't be saved. Ning Shu came back to his senses and wiped the saliva from the corner of his mouth. When he was about to take a shower, the doorbell rang. Ning Shu quickly went to open the door. There was an officer in military uniform standing at the door. When he saw the officer, Ning Shu was surprised. He asked, Officer, why are you looking for me? I'm not looking for you. I'm looking for your partner. The officer said and entered the room. He looked around but didn't see anyone. Ning Shu asked, where is he? The school doctor was still there. Ning Shu said, he probably went to get dressed. The school doctor was only wrapped in a bath towel. The officer looked at Ning Shu and said, you're still young. You're already with him. Ning Shu was speechless. What did he mean? Did the officer think that the uncle was naked because he did it with her? Ning Shu's mouth twitched. You're thinking too much. The uncle was such a pervert. It was still a question whether he liked women. After a while, the school doctor came out of the room. He was wearing a white shirt and a black windbreaker. When he saw the officer, his face was indifferent. Well, I have something to talk to you about. Let's go out and talk, the officer said to the school doctor. He was very respectful to the school doctor. The school doctor's eyes swept across Ning Shu's face. He nodded and followed the officer out. The school doctor turned back and said to Ning Shu, there are biscuits if you're hungry. Don't touch the food. You can wait for me to come back and cook. Ning Shu nodded. He didn't know what they were talking about. Why did they have to avoid him? Was there a secret? Not long after the school doctor left, the doorbell rang again. Ning Shu was a little surprised. He came back so soon. When he opened the door, he saw that it was young Phoenix. Young Phoenix looked at Ning Shu with a cold face. Ning Shu wanted to close the door without thinking. Young Phoenix blocked the door and said coldly, "Flower, what's with your attitude?" Ning Shu mobilized the internal force in his body and closed the door. He clapped his hands. She didn't come without a reason. Ning Shu didn't even give young Phoenix a chance to speak. Young Phoenix knocked on the door outside. The person inside refused to open the door. Young Phoenix said coldly, "Flower, I advise you to open the door quickly. Otherwise, I will destroy your door with my superpower." Damn, he was so arrogant that he came knocking on her door. Ning Shu said through the door, "What do you want from me?" "I'm not looking for you. I'm looking for your roommate," young Phoenix said. "Flower, open the door." What day was it today? Why did so many people come to the school doctor? Was it because they were amazed by his shooting skills? "Uncle isn't here." "Come another day," Ning Shu said. "Flower, I asked you to open the door. What's with your attitude? Do you think that you're going to be arrogant when you come to the base with an officer supporting you and a man protecting you?" Young Phoenix's voice was sharp through the door. Chapter 107. Ning Shu was speechless. She didn't approach young Phoenix at all, but the other party was trying to make trouble for her. She stayed far away from the protagonist. Why? Was her charm too low? Ning Shu was considering if she should add some of her attributes to her charm. A charm of 1 point was too shabby. Ning Shu was thinking about why the female protagonist didn't like her. Outside the room, young Phoenix was pounding on the door and calling Ning Shu's name. "Flower, flower." It was like she was asking for his life. Ning Shu opened the door and asked young Phoenix angrily, "What do you want?" "I'm looking for your roommate." Young Phoenix pushed Ning Shu away and walked around the room. She didn't see the school doctor. Ning Shu asked, "Where is he?" Ning Shu's heart felt like it was about to explode. She questioned her so confidently. Ning Shu said, "I already said that he's not here." "Where did he go?" Young Phoenix asked again. Ning Shu rolled her eyes and said, "How would I know?" Young Phoenix sat on the sofa and waited. Ning Shu was stunned. What did she mean? Did she have to wait for the school doctor to come back? Ning Shu and young Phoenix didn't speak. The room was quiet. Ning Shu didn't want to entertain guests. He didn't even pour a glass of water for young Phoenix. "Flower, do you know your roommate?" Young Phoenix suddenly asked Ning Shu. "By the way, what's his name?" She didn't know the school doctor's name. His code name was Crazy, but she didn't know his name. Ning Shu shook her head and said, "I don't know." Young Phoenix's face turned ugly. "Flower, what do you mean?" "I'm just asking for his name." Damn it, she really didn't know the uncle's name. Ning Shu said impatiently, "I said I don't know, so I don't know." "You." Young Phoenix was choked by Ning Shu's attitude. She said coldly, "Flower, don't be too proud." "What am I proud of? What's there to be proud of?" Ning Shu could not understand what young Phoenix meant. Did young Phoenix think that she deliberately did not tell the uncle her name? It was just a name. There was nothing he couldn't say. Young Phoenix's expression was cold. An icicle appeared in her hand and she pointed it at Ning Shu. Ning Shu immediately pulled out his gun and said coldly, "Young Phoenix, what are you doing?" "Hua, you are just a lowly person who has yet to awaken an ability. How dare you talk to me like that? Believe it or not, I can kill you and the officer won't say anything," young Phoenix said coldly. Ning Shu was speechless. He squinted his eyes and aimed at Little Phoenix. He said loudly, "Little Phoenix, is there something wrong with your brain? Why did you come to my house to kill me?" He really couldn't understand what the female lead was thinking. "Based on your attitude towards me, it wouldn't be too much for me to kill you." The icicle in young Phoenix's hand was spinning. The icicle was very sharp. When it came into contact with the air, it emitted white smoke. Fuck, she was really crazy. What was the female lead's mentality? Ning Shu saw young Phoenix's teeth itching. He wondered if he had offended young Phoenix in some way. After arriving at the base, he had no contact with young Phoenix. The school doctor who was talking to the officer came back. When he walked into the room, he saw the two women confronting each other. He raised his handsome eyebrows and said, "What are you doing?" As he spoke, he pulled out a gun from his waist and aimed it at young Phoenix. Young Phoenix was a lot more nervous when facing the school doctor. After all, he was someone who could even hit a zombie. Young Phoenix didn't think that she could be faster than a zombie. The school doctor looked at Ning Shu and said calmly, "What are you doing? You're so useless that they came knocking on your door." Ning Shu was speechless. Young Phoenix put away the icicle in her hand and said to the school doctor, "Put away your gun. I am not an enemy." The school doctor put away his gun and asked young Phoenix coldly, "What's the matter?" Young Phoenix did not know what to say. She came to this man on impulse. Because of this man, she quarreled with Lone Wolf. "I quarreled with Lone Wolf." Young Phoenix blurted out her thoughts and looked at the school doctor. The school doctor was confused and confused. This was the first time Ning Shu had seen such an expression on the school doctor's face. The school doctor was surprised and said, "What does it have to do with me?" Ning Shu was speechless. Young Phoenix's face turned green and then white. When she saw Ning Shu's smile, she felt as if she was soaked in boiling water. Her whole body was burning. The young Phoenix rushed out of the room and slammed the door. The door made a loud bang, and even the dust on the wall fell down. Ning Shu dug his ears. It was really loud. Ning Shu turned to the school doctor and said, "Uncle, she is here to act coquettishly." "What the hell?" The school doctor frowned. Ning Shu said, "Dust the sofa." Ning Shu asked, "Why should I dust the sofa?" "The place where she sat is very dirty," the school doctor said indifferently. Ning Shu was speechless. She was hopeless. The school doctor made some food for Ning Shu. It was enough for one person. Ning Shu asked, "Aren't you eating?" "I have eaten," the school doctor said indifferently. Ning Shu pursed her lips. The officer did not even bring her along to treat people to a meal. "Uncle, there is only one bed. Where am I supposed to sleep?" This was a single-room apartment and there was only one bed. Therefore, Ning Shu wanted to know where she was. The school doctor said indifferently, "You want to sleep with me?" When he spoke, his gold-rimmed glasses reflected the light. He looked very creepy and dangerous. Ning Shu quickly waved her hand and said, "I can sleep on the sofa." The school doctor nodded. He was obviously very satisfied with this suggestion. Ning Shu pursed her lips. She was a woman. Shouldn't she sleep on the sofa and show her manliness? She felt that the school doctor did not see her as a woman at all. At night, Ning Shu curled up on the sofa and looked at the school doctor on the bed with resentment. He really wanted her to sleep on the sofa. Whoosh, whoosh, in the middle of the night, Ning Shu was sleeping soundly when an ear-piercing alarm sounded. Ning Shu sat up in shock as if she was on the verge of death. Her entire body was in a daze. When she turned her head, she saw the uncle get out of bed and put on his jacket. "The zombies are attacking the base. Get up." The school doctor adjusted his collar and buttoned up his shirt. Ning Shu, attacking the city in the middle of the night. Oh my God. Ning Shu jumped off the sofa and picked up the guns, sticks, and axes on the table. She followed the school doctor out the door. Many people rushed to the entrance of the base. Some people did not even put on their clothes. They put on their clothes as they ran. At the entrance of the base, a huge searchlight shone on the zombies outside the base. These zombies tirelessly rushed towards the entrance of the base. Even if they were blocked by the electric fence at the entrance, and were electrocuted until their bodies smelled black, they did not know fear. Chapter 108. The zombies were really smelly, and the rotten smell could make people faint. Ning Shu stood on the high wall of the base and looked at the zombies below. She felt very bitter. She had been in the apocalypse for so long, and she had given the gene solution to the officer. Why hadn't the system let her go back? The roar was very familiar. It was from the mutated zombies during the day. It was really endless. Did they want to fight with the base? The rocket bombs attacked the zombies, but the endless zombies were rushing over. At night, people's vision was limited. Paranormals had super strong vision, but it was a challenge for ordinary people. The mutated zombie was suspended in the air, and the searchlights were focused on it. The mutated zombie had changed its tattered clothes and was wearing new clothes. It looked no different from a normal person. Ning Shu looked up at the zombie. She was really annoyed. This zombie was as intelligent as a human, and it was particularly difficult to deal with so many zombies. It was like cheating. Ning Shu shot the head of the ordinary zombies, and the paranormals dealt with the mutated zombies. So many paranormals were powerless to deal with the mutated zombies. If the paranormals were not careful, their hearts would be taken out by the mutated zombies. It simply made people's hearts turn cold. Ning Shu was killing zombies while paying attention to the situation of the mutated zombies. The uncle didn't do anything, as if he was just a bystander. But no one said anything, as if they didn't see the carefree school doctor. Ning Shu was killing zombies when she suddenly felt a huge force on her back. Her body involuntarily flew forward, and the worst thing was that she was flying in the direction of the mutated zombies. Ning Shu hurriedly circulated her chi and turned back. When she turned around, she saw that it was young Phoenix who had done it. Ning Shu's heart was like a grass mud horse. The plot was really irresistible. Was she really going to die in the hands of young Phoenix and be dismembered by zombies like in the original plot? Ning Shu instantly understood why the system hadn't summoned her back for such a long time. There was still such a thing. Flower, dodge, Ning Shu shouted as he pulled out his gun and fired at Ning Shu. The bullet didn't hit Ning Shu, but hit the zombie behind Ning Shu. However, when Ning Shu tried to escape, the zombie still managed to injure his back. He felt the zombie's nails scratching his back painfully. Ning Shu was so angry that he couldn't care less. He ran towards young Phoenix and fired a shot. Young Phoenix released an ice shield to block Ning Shu's bullet. Fuck, even if I die, I'll drag you down with me. Ning Shu ran over and grabbed young Phoenix's collar. Then, he smashed young Phoenix to the ground like a whip. Once, twice, young Phoenix's face turned green as blood spurted from its mouth. It looked at Ning Shu with fear in its eyes. Lone Wolf saw young Phoenix's situation and quickly came to its aid. Ning Shu directly used his chi to stab young Phoenix's heart with a sharpened wooden stick. Young Phoenix's body moved a little, and the stick avoided its heart and pierced its stomach. Young Phoenix wailed in pain. Lone Wolf rushed over with lightning flashing in his hand. He was about to hit Ning Shu's head, but in the next second, Lone Wolf's hand was pierced by a bullet. Blood spurted out. Ning Shu was stunned for a moment before his wrist was grabbed by someone. Ning Shu didn't think and wanted to fight back with the wooden stick. "Girl, it's me." The school doctor's voice was very low. Ning Shu calmed down and looked up at the school doctor. "Useless." The school doctor pulled Ning Shu into the base and didn't intend to care about the zombies at the gate. Back in the room, Ning Shu felt pain in his back. It was very painful. It was as if salt was sprinkled on the bleeding wound. Ning Shu's body began to tremble. Could it be that this mission couldn't be completed? Lie down. The school doctor uncle said to Ning Shu. Ning Shu looked at the needle in the school doctor uncle's hand and asked, "Uncle, what is this?" "You are infected with the zombie virus." The school doctor poked Ning Shu's arm with the needle. The whole needle went into the skin. It was too painful. Fuck, couldn't he be gentler? Then Ning Shu realized a problem. She was caught by zombies. She was infected with the zombie virus. Did that mean she would become a zombie? Fuck, how could this be? She thought about how the school doctor uncle killed an infected agent without hesitation. She couldn't have been killed by the uncle, right? Ning Shu endured the pain in his back and asked the school doctor uncle, "Uncle, what did you inject into me?" Was it because they knew each other and gave her a euthanasia drug? The school doctor uncle frowned and looked at Ning Shu. He said, "This drug can prevent your brain from being invaded by the virus to a certain extent." Hearing this, Ning Shu felt relieved. The school doctor wouldn't kill her directly. She guessed that she would become a research subject. This was good. "Uncle, can you give me some painkillers?" Ning Shu was in so much pain. The places where the zombies scratched were burning. The heat began to spread to the whole body. Ning Shu could even hear the cells in his body wailing. They were tortured by the powerful virus. Even his brain began to feel pain and heat. The virus had spread to his brain. Ning Shu finally understood why zombies were like walking corpses. They were monsters without any thoughts. It was because the virus was too destructive. "Flower, focus." The school doctor patted Ning Shu's face. Ning Shu tried to open her eyes and look at the school doctor uncle. Ning Shu was in so much pain. She didn't know how long the pain lasted. Everything in front of her blurred. An alluring scent that she had never smelled before entered her nose. She was extremely hungry and wanted to pounce on the man in front of her, press down on his body, bite his neck, cover his chest, and then dig out his beating heart that was full of temptation. Ning Shu wanted to make a sound, but found that her speech system had been destroyed. She couldn't say anything. When she opened her mouth to make a sound, it was like air was leaking out of her throat. Fuck, life was full of evil. She had become a zombie. She wanted to circulate her chi, but found that the chi in her body was gone. Her body had become clumsy. Ning Shu was speechless. But he was very hungry now. There was a living person beside him. Ning Shu reached out and wanted to grab the school doctor uncle. A cold black thing was placed on her forehead. "Don't point a gun at me." She was afraid. Ning Shu suddenly quivered and retracted her claws. The school doctor uncle looked at Ning Shu. "Conscious?" Ning Shu couldn't hear what the school doctor was saying. The virus had destroyed her hearing. She couldn't see very well. It was like 800 degrees of myopia. She couldn't distinguish between humans and animals. Chapter 109. The school doctor talked to Ning Shu, but Ning Shu was confused and couldn't hear what the uncle was saying. The uncle gave up talking to Ning Shu. The school doctor found a hearing aid from the box and hung it beside Ning Shu's ear. Ning Shu was speechless. "Can you hear me?" The school doctor raised his voice and asked. Ning Shu nodded with difficulty. Actually, she couldn't hear clearly. She didn't know if it was because the medicine was effective or because she was thinking about the mission. She was determined to complete the mission and kept a clear mind. However, her desire for human flesh didn't decrease at all. Her sense of smell became very sensitive. The smell of the base was too fragrant, but Ning Shu resisted and felt disgusted by human flesh. However, she instinctively wanted to eat it. Damn, the struggle in her heart was really intense. After a difficult night, Ning Shu completely turned into a zombie. She couldn't speak, her movements were slow, and she was in a state of hunger. She wanted to eat the man beside her at any time. Every time she showed such thoughts, there would be a black muzzle pointed at her. It made Ning Shu's unbeating heart spasm twice. What the fuck was this? What should she do about the mission? We have to leave the base now, Ning Shu said. Ning Shu heard it with difficulty, but Ning Shu was very much in favor of leaving the base. She was now a zombie, and in the base, she was a monster who killed people. Especially if the young phoenix was fine, it would definitely take revenge on her. She felt that the young phoenix wouldn't die so easily. In any case, it was the world's favorite and had a lot of luck. However, Ning Shu couldn't walk fast at all. Looking at the school doctor in front of her, she couldn't catch up. The school doctor turned around and saw Ning Shu's slow movements. He squatted down and said loudly to Ning Shu, "Come up, I'll carry you." Ning Shu looked at the uncle's white shirt and black windbreaker. If she dirted them, the uncle would kill her. Hurry up. Let's leave while everyone else is busy. The school doctor turned around and saw that Ning Shu was not moving. He pulled Ning Shu's hand and put it behind his back. Ning Shu was very touched. Then, he started to drool, especially when he saw the uncle's snow-white neck. He really wanted to take a bite. It was too fragrant. He had never felt that the uncle was so charming. "Little flower, if you drool on me, just wait for your head to explode," the uncle said coldly. Ning Shu felt wronged. She was now a disabled person. Her brain couldn't control things like drooling. The uncle shoved Ning Shu into the car and drove away from the base. No one knew what was going on. Lone Wolf's hand that was shot by the uncle was bandaged. He came to find trouble but found that the building was empty. Lone Wolf was so angry that he destroyed everything in the building. The school doctor ran far away from the base. Ning Shu wanted to ask the uncle where he was going, but she couldn't speak. Every time she opened her mouth, the uncle would think that she was going to bite him. The gun was pointed at her head, making Ning Shu feel very stifled. She just wanted to talk. The school doctor brought Ning Shu to a laboratory. The laboratory was very desolate. The entrance was under an old withered tree. However, the more Ning Shu walked, the more familiar it felt. She had been here before. Was this the uncle's nest? Ning Shu saw a corpse soaked in a huge glass bottle. It was the corpse of a beautiful woman. Her body was curvaceous. Ning Shu was shocked when she saw her face. Wasn't this Ling Shui? The facial muscles were twisted. It seemed that she suffered a lot before she died. Ning Shu felt a chill in her heart. She felt that the school doctor brought her here with bad intentions. Could it be that he didn't want to dissect a human and wanted to dissect a zombie? Ning Shu looked at the school doctor with a pair of blurred, myopic eyes. The school doctor took off his black windbreaker and changed into a white coat. Coupled with his glowing gold-rimmed glasses, Ning Shu was so scared that she almost peed her pants. He looked even more like a perverted scientist. "Lie down." The school doctor adjusted the glasses on the bridge of his nose. "Ning Shu, what are you talking about? I can't hear you. I can't hear you. I can't see you, lie down on the operating table." The school doctor shouted at Ning Shu again. This time, his voice was louder. The whole laboratory echoed. Ning Shu was still confused. She didn't hear anything. "Lie down and let him dissect her. You're good at pretending to be stupid." Ning Shu walked over. Ning Shu stepped back. The school doctor directly dragged Ning Shu and pressed her on the operating table. Then, her limbs were cuffed by the handcuffs on the operating table. Ning Shu's heart turned cold. She finally understood how Ling Shui felt when she was lying on the operating table. She was at the mercy of others. Save me. Ning Shu desperately blinked her eyes at the school doctor. Uncle, please let me go. There are so many zombies. Why do you want to dissect me? The school doctor saw Ning Shu blinking her eyes. Hey, are you going blind? The virus in the mutated zombie also mutated. Ning Shu, the school doctor took a needle and wanted to draw some blood from Ning Shu's arm. But he didn't find any blood vessels. The school doctor seemed to be impatient. He directly pierced the aorta on Ning Shu's neck and drew out a needle of blood. Mom, help. The uncle is so perverted. Although the virus destroyed her nerves and she couldn't feel pain, the feeling was too horrible. Seeing that the uncle was busy and didn't seem to want to dissect her, Ning Shu's heart was relieved. She opened her eyes and looked around. Then she saw the pale body soaked in formalin. Ning Shu swallowed a mouthful of saliva. She wanted to tear it. She was hungry. Disgusted and eager, Ning Shu felt like she was going crazy. Looking at the uncle in the laboratory studying her blood, smelling the smell of the uncle, her heart was burning. Please give me something to eat. Ning Shu felt that she was now a monster with only appetite. After a while, the uncle washed his hands several times. Then he sat next to the operating table. He looked at Ning Shu and said, "Girl, stay rational." Ning Shu wanted to cry. You are hovering next to me. No matter how rational I am, I can't control it. You don't understand the pain in my heart. The school doctor in front of Ning Shu ate some hardtack and drank some water. Seeing Ning Shu staring at him, he asked, "Do you want to eat?" "I want to eat you." Ning Shu roared in her heart. She nodded to the uncle with difficulty. The uncle broke off some hardtack and put it in Ning Shu's mouth. Ning Shu chewed with difficulty and swallowed it. What the hell is this? It's not delicious at all. It's like people eating sand. If only the uncle could give her some blood. Chapter 110. Ning Shu didn't know how long she had stayed in the lab. She was starving every day, but she didn't starve to death. It was just that this appetite was tormenting her. The school doctor took the test tube, pinched Ning Shu's chin and poured some liquid into her mouth. Ning Shu smacked her lips. There was no taste. What was this? Ning Shu tried to use her blurred eyes to ask the uncle what this was. The uncle's brain waves finally matched with Ning Shu's. He said, "This is gene fluid." Ning Shu, why did he give a zombie like her to drink gene fluid? The school doctor frowned and asked, "Do you feel anything?" Ning Shu shook her head. She didn't feel anything. She just wasn't that hungry anymore. She didn't feel like dying from hunger anymore. Could it be that this gene fluid was an energy source? Girl, how about now? How do you feel now? The school doctor asked again. Ning Shu opened her mouth and used her lips to tell the school doctor that she wasn't that hungry anymore. You don't feel that hungry anymore? The school doctor guessed. Ning Shu immediately nodded. The school doctor's face flashed with understanding. He said, "No wonder zombies are also interested in gene fluid. Zombies are interested in humans and eat humans as food. Maybe zombies also want to replenish their body's genes. The intuitive manifestation is their extreme desire for humans." Ning Shu, perverted scientists were too scary. No matter if it was a psychic or a mutated zombie, the ultimate goal was to become an evolved human. The school doctor gave Ning Shu another test tube of gene fluid. Ning Shu felt great. It was much easier to control her body than before. The school doctor took off his white coat and put on a black windbreaker. It seemed that he was going to go out. Ning Shu stared at the school doctor and used her eyes to ask, "Uncle, where are you going?" The school doctor pushed up the gold-rimmed glasses on the bridge of his nose. Ning Shu said, "I'm going out." "Stay here." Ning Shu looked at the school doctor and thought, "You must come back." The lab was very quiet. Ning Shu was lying on the operating table. Her hands and feet were tied. Her heart was very sad. The most unbearable thing for Ning Shu was that she seemed to have lost her ability to sleep after becoming a zombie. He wanted to sleep but couldn't. Insomnia was really painful. After an unknown amount of time, the school doctor uncle came back with half of a female corpse. The other half of the body seemed to have been eaten by zombies. It was bloody and disgusting to look at. The school doctor's face didn't change. He directly put the body on the other side of the operating table and started dissecting the body. Ning Shu was watching from the side. She almost wanted to kneel down in front of the uncle. Ning Shu really admired his calm expression. But he didn't know where the uncle had found the corpse, or if he had taken it from a zombie. The school doctor started working busily. He even collected samples from the soaked Ling Shui's body for comparison. Then, Ning Shu lay on the operating table, bored. What Ning Shu wanted to do the most was to get up and walk around, but the uncle had no intention of letting her go. "Uncle, you think too much. I don't dare to touch you at all." The school doctor, who had been busy for a long time, seemed to have completely forgotten about Ning Shu's existence. Ning Shu chuckled twice to make her presence known. But the school doctor still ignored her. Ning Shu stared at the school doctor. His face was cold and his body was tall and straight. What a mysterious person. The school doctor was too mysterious. After an unknown amount of time, the uncle finally finished his work. He threw the body into the formalin, washed his hands countless times, and ate something. After that, he said to Ning Shu, "This time, let's try using the gene fluid extracted by the psychic." Ning Shu was forced to drink the gene fluid that hadn't been tested. When she drank it, she felt like she was drinking chilly water. Her whole throat was burning. Since she became a zombie, she didn't feel pain. When she drank the gene fluid, she felt numb. It felt like she was drinking sulfuric acid. She was really a poor lab rat. After drinking it, Ning Shu felt that her head was much clearer and her thoughts were much more active. She was no longer as muddle-headed as before. Although she was conscious, she felt that her head was very heavy. There was no change for the time being. The school doctor didn't ask. He lay on the operating table and fell asleep. Ning Shu looked at the school doctor silently. "Damn it, watching him sleep while I can't sleep. It's so painful." Ning Shu thought and finally closed her eyes and fell asleep. Even Ning Shu didn't know how she fell asleep. She couldn't sleep before. "Flower, wake up." The school doctor pushed Ning Shu's body. Ning Shu opened her eyes. She was stunned because she could see very clearly now. The school doctor's face was very clear in front of her. "How do you feel?" the school doctor asked. Ning Shu nodded. She felt very comfortable. The school doctor saw that Ning Shu's movements were very smooth. She didn't feel like a robot like before. He took the gene fluid and poured it into Ning Shu's mouth. "Try to see if you can talk." The school doctor, Ning Shu, said while writing something in a notebook. Ning Shu opened her mouth and shook her head at the school doctor. She couldn't talk. It wasn't easy to make zombies talk. The powerful zombies that attacked the base couldn't talk. They could only howl like beasts. The school doctor unbuttoned Ning Shu's clothes. "Ning Shu, oh, uncle, what are you trying to do?" Ning Shu wanted to express her surprise, but her facial muscles weren't strong enough. The school doctor ignored Ning Shu. He took water and wiped the dust off Ning Shu's body. This feeling was no different from washing a test tube. The school doctor's expression was very indifferent. He said with disdain, "I've never seen such a dirty person. Ning Shu, she was a zombie now, but she still had to endure the school doctor's severe mysophobia. Meeting the school doctor was really an unbearable burden in her life. Looking at the school doctor wiping her body without hesitation, Ning Shu felt very ashamed. After he finished wiping her body, the school doctor washed Ning Shu's hair and sprayed disinfectant all over her body. Ning Shu, he was bullying her for not knowing how to talk. After everything was done, the school doctor sat beside Ning Shu. He looked at Ning Shu lazily and said, "Do you want to get up?" Ning Shu quickly nodded. She really wanted to get up. She didn't want to lie in the operating room. This feeling was too horrifying. Especially when the school doctor was holding a shiny scalpel in his hand, this feeling was even worse. "Not now," the school doctor said and put the scalpel on the tray. It made a crisp sound. Then he took out a syringe and directly inserted it into Ning Shu's aorta to draw blood. "Let me see your cell division." The school doctor looked at the blood in the syringe under the light. "Ning Shu, damn, can't you be gentler?" Chapter 111. Ning Shu and the school doctor just stayed in the lab and didn't go anywhere. The school doctor studied the changes in her body every day, and occasionally pricked her neck with a needle. She didn't know if it was because she was fed too much gene fluid, but she didn't feel pain before. Now that she was pricked by the uncle, it was like being bitten by an ant. This meant that she was recovering from the pain, but the uncle was still as simple and crude as before. She couldn't tell the uncle that she was in pain. Ning Shu felt that she was now a lab rat being used by the uncle to study the evolution of zombies. Ning Shu was already very satisfied that she was still alive. "Girl, do you remember?" The school doctor raised his handsome eyebrows and looked at Ning Shu. Ning Shu immediately nodded. She really remembered what it felt like to be disinfected by the uncle twice a day and wash her hair twice a day. She felt like she was going to become bald. The uncle unlocked the chain and said, "If you dare to break the things in the lab, you can wait for your head to explode." Ning Shu was speechless. After unlocking the chain, Ning Shu moved, and then the bones all over her body made a crackling sound, as if they were rusty. Standing up, Ning Shu walked 2 steps and then jumped. Her body was very agile, and her jumping ability was very good. So she was now a mutated zombie. What a colorful life. "How do you feel?" the school doctor asked Ning Shu. Ning Shu gave him a thumbs up, but when he retracted his hand, he bumped into the shelf. Then, the shelf fell down with a crash. The flasks and test tubes used for experiments all fell to the ground and shattered into pieces. Ning Shu was speechless. She just bumped into the shelf, how could it fall down? Ning Shu looked at the school doctor's indifferent face, expressionless, and the gold-rimmed glasses reflected a cold light. Ning Shu wanted to explain, but the moment she opened her mouth, she could only chuckle. She could only bend down and pick up the medicine on the ground. Then, she casually pinched it, and the medicine inside burst open. The chemicals inside sprayed out. Ning Shu was speechless. Was she that strong? Even those who had mastered peerless martial arts would not have such great strength. The school doctor looked at Ning Shu indifferently. Ning Shu felt bitter, especially when he saw the school doctor touching the gun at his waist. Ning Shu almost knelt down. Damn it, if she said it was an accident, would the uncle believe her? The uncle picked up the things on the ground. Ning Shu wanted to help, but the school doctor looked at her indifferently. Ning Shu immediately withdrew her hand. "Emma, now she must learn to control this body." After tidying up the lab, the school doctor led Ning Shu out of the lab. Ning Shu used his eyes to ask the uncle where they were going. The school doctor ignored Ning Shu and drove as if he was looking for something. Ning Shu's ears twitched. There were zombies nearby. Ning Shu wanted to remind the uncle, but the uncle glanced at her and said, "I don't want to talk to you now." Ning Shu was speechless. The uncle was still angry about the lab. It was an accident. Roar, the roars of the zombies were getting closer. Ning Shu looked at the uncle's indifferent face. Ning Shu wondered if the uncle was deaf. After a while, the zombies surrounded them. The school doctor was not in a hurry. He was just taking a walk and even stopped the car. Seeing so many zombies, Ning Shu's heart trembled. She quietly approached the uncle. The uncle pushed Ning Shu away, opened the car door and kicked Ning Shu out. Ning Shu was speechless. Ning Shu was in a mess. What was the uncle doing? Why did he throw her into a group of zombies? Help, there are so many zombies. Ning Shu looked at the zombies around her and slapped the car window. Uncle, help. She could not deal with so many zombies. She would be torn apart by them. Hua, you are a zombie, not a human. The school doctor saw Ning Shu's panicked look. Ning Shu was speechless. She still felt that she was a human and not a zombie. Ning Shu looked around and found that the zombies did not attack her. The zombies around her did not dare to come close. Ning Shu let out a sigh of relief. Oh my God, that was so scary. I thought I was going to be torn apart by the zombies. Hua, go kill the zombies and control your strength. The school doctor sat in the car and said to Ning Shu. Ning Shu was stunned for a moment and then excitedly went to kill the zombies. The zombies seemed to have felt Ning Shu's breath. When they saw Ning Shu coming over, they turned their heads and went in another direction. They seemed to be deliberately avoiding Ning Shu. Ning Shu looked at the zombie's head and squeezed it hard. The zombie's head was like a piece of tofu in her hand. She squeezed it easily and the gray brain matter splashed on her face. Ning Shu stared blankly at her filthy hands. Why was she so strong? Hua, I don't have enough disinfectant to wash your body. Pay attention to your hygiene. The school doctor looked at Ning Shu's face that was covered in brain matter and could not bear to look at it. You looked like this when you were a human. You still look like this after becoming a zombie. Ning Shu had a certain understanding of her own strength. She picked up a wooden stick from the ground and smashed it on the zombie's head. Then, the zombie's head exploded, just like a hammer smashing a walnut. It felt very good. Okay, you can come back. The school doctor uncle shouted to Ning Shu. Ning Shu heard the uncle's voice and immediately opened the car door. She wanted to sit in the car but the door was pulled down by her. Ning Shu looked at the car door in her hand and then looked at the school doctor uncle's indifferent face. The school doctor uncle's eyes reflected a dangerous light. Ning Shu was speechless. She suddenly became a strong woman. It felt so complicated. Take the car door and sit on the roof. The school doctor uncle said indifferently and pointed at the roof. Ning Shu curled her lips. She held the car door with one hand and climbed onto the roof of the car. She sat on the roof. Sigh, there was so much dust on the roof. When they returned to the laboratory, the uncle threw Ning Shu into the pool to wash up. He then started to eat. Ning Shu saw the uncle eating and swallowed a mouthful of saliva. Of course, it wasn't because of the biscuits in the uncle's hand. It was because of the uncle's neck. She wanted to take a bite and drink some warm blood. Ning Shu silently approached the uncle and took a deep breath. It smelled so good. Ning Shu slowly approached the uncle's neck. The uncle turned his head and his lips brushed past Ning Shu's face. He spat in disgust and took out a gun and pointed it at Ning Shu's forehead. Ning Shu was immersed in the aroma when she suddenly felt something cold on her forehead. She shuddered and looked up to see the black muzzle of a gun pointed at her. Ning Shu pretended to be at a loss and innocently moved to the side, away from the uncle. The uncle took out a bottle of gene fluid and threw it to Ning Shu. Drink this. Ning Shu gently opened it and gulped down the gene fluid. It was like drinking chilly water. It tasted very good. Chapter 112. Every time Ning Shu drank the gene fluid, she didn't feel hungry, and the smell of the school doctor's body was no longer attractive to her. This gene fluid was really a treasure. From now on, would her food be the gene fluid that tasted like chili water? It seemed that this kind of thing was very rare, and the uncle didn't have much. Ning Shu burped, sat on the ground and leaned against the wall for a while. Every time she drank the gene fluid, she seemed to be a little sleepy. "Flower, how do you feel now?" the school doctor asked Ning Shu. Ning Shu lifted her eyelids and made a gesture of wanting to sleep. The uncle wrote something in his notebook, and Ning Shu said, "Sleep on the operating table. You can sleep anywhere, you don't look like a woman at all." Ning Shu was speechless. Uncle, sleeping on the operating table would be weird. She was a zombie now, and the term woman should have nothing to do with her. Sleep on the operating table. The school doctor pointed at the operating table. Ning Shu could only climb onto the operating table to sleep, and then the school doctor inserted a needle into Ning Shu's neck. The school doctor looked at the purplish-black blood and said, "Hua, your lifespan will be very long." Ordinary zombies have a very long lifespan, but they have to endure the endless torment of appetite. The lucky zombies that have evolved are all advanced humans. Superpowered people and zombies have the same goal, they both want to evolve themselves. The school doctor shook the blood in the test tube. "Your cell division is very slow, and there is basically no cell death. This means that your life will be infinitely extended." Ning Shu was speechless. So complicated. She was a child who had never been to school, and Ning Shu, who only had elementary school knowledge, didn't understand what the school doctor was talking about. The school doctor went to study the blood, and Ning Shu was sleeping on the operating table. She didn't know how long she slept, but when Ning Shu woke up, she felt very good. She didn't feel like a zombie at all. She looked in the mirror, and her face was a little green, and her skin was dry. "Let's go out," the school doctor Uncle Ning Shu said. Seeing Ning Shu looking in the mirror, he glanced at Ning Shu's face and said faintly, "TSK, I feel that there is no difference between a human and a zombie. You don't look good." Ning Shu felt as if an arrow had pierced through his heart. Even when speaking directly, he had to consider whether others would be able to take it or not. He followed the uncle out of the lab. Were they going to kill zombies again? "Sit on the roof of the car," Uncle Ning Shu said. "Ning Shu, why? Isn't your car door fixed?" Under the gaze of the school doctor, Ning Shu silently climbed onto the roof of the car. This was definitely discrimination against a zombie like her, not even allowing her to get on the car. This time, the uncle didn't seem to specifically look for zombies. Instead, he brought Ning Shu to a tall building, and then a human and a zombie climbed onto the highest floor of the building. Ning Shu looked down. It was quite high, more than 20 meters. She was afraid of heights. Ning Shu took 2 steps back and looked at the school doctor uncle with a puzzled expression. What were they doing on the roof? Overlooking the world? The school doctor uncle looked at Ning Shu. Ning Shu's heart suddenly surged with a bad feeling. She took 2 steps back and looked at the uncle vigilantly. The school doctor uncle grabbed Ning Shu's hand. Ning Shu was confused. What was he trying to do? The school doctor uncle directly threw Ning Shu down the building. Ning Shu held the uncle's hand tightly and looked at the uncle with a pitiful expression. "Uncle, don't let go." "Fuck," the uncle was going to push her down the building. "Please let go, I'm going to die." "Let go." The school doctor uncle swung his hand twice, but didn't manage to get rid of Ning Shu. He repeated, "Let go." Ning Shu shook her head. If she fell from 20 meters, she would become a meat patty. "Hua, you're a zombie. Even if you fall, you won't die." The school doctor uncle said, "Now you should be able to overcome gravity and float in the air." Ning Shu, oh, fuck, he didn't have to directly throw her down the building. What if something happened? Let's see how you feel when I throw you down the building. Useless. The uncle pulled Ning Shu up. Ning Shu patted her chest in fear. The school doctor uncle looked at Ning Shu. Ning Shu immediately pretended to be at a loss. Since you're afraid of heights, let's go to a lower floor. The school doctor uncle looked at her with disdain. Again, Ning Shu bitterly followed the uncle downstairs. At 15 meters, the school doctor uncle looked at Ning Shu. Ning Shu quickly shook her head. It's too high. The school doctor uncle looked indifferent. His gold-rimmed glasses reflected a dangerous light. Ning Shu lowered her head and didn't look at him. Fuck, this uncle is too evil. Then the uncle took Ning Shu to the 10-meter floor. Then he looked at Ning Shu. Ning Shu shook her head with difficulty. It's still a bit high. After that, they reached the 5-meter floor. The school doctor uncle's thin lips were tightly pursed. He raised his chin and looked at Ning Shu. The uncle's body was very oppressive. If she still thought it was too high, the uncle would probably go berserk. What do you think about this height? The school doctor uncle asked indifferently. Ning Shu stretched her neck and looked outside. She really wanted to ask if it could be on the second floor. Under the uncle's gaze, Ning Shu nodded with difficulty. Then, before Ning Shu could react, she was kicked down the stairs by the uncle. Help! Ning Shu's heart was roaring. Her ears were filled with the whistling of the wind. Mama, she was so scared. Plop! Ning Shu fell into the garden. She raised her head and spat out the soil in her mouth. She was really unlucky. Flower, come up quickly. The uncle's voice was like a demon's. Ning Shu got up and checked her body to see if she was injured. She checked again. Luckily, there were no injuries. Wait, she wasn't injured. Did the representative have to continue? Girl, come up. The uncle's voice sounded again. Ning Shu slowly prepared to climb up the stairs. Then, she heard the uncle say, "Don't climb the stairs. Jump up." Ning Shu, what the fuck? He wouldn't give up until he forced her to death. Ning Shu looked up and met the uncle's eyes. Then, she silently looked away and checked if there was anything around her that she could use to jump up the stairs. Ning Shu picked a big tree not far from the building and quickly climbed up the building. Then, she crouched down and jumped towards the uncle's position. Ning Shu was just giving it a try. She didn't expect that she would really jump up the stairs. Ning Shu looked at the uncle who was just inches away from her and suddenly reached out to hug him. Then, the two of them fell to the ground. Ning Shu was on top of the uncle. Her hand touched the uncle's chest and she could feel his beating heart under her hand. The school doctor's face was indifferent. He pressed the gun against Ning Shu's forehead. Ning Shu immediately got up from the school doctor's body and helped the uncle up. The school doctor glanced at Ning Shu. He patted the dust off his clothes with a look of disgust and disgust. He looked very irritable. OCD and severe misophobia. Uncle, you're hopeless. Chapter 113. The school doctor used an inhumane training method to make her master the ability to walk in the air. Ning Shu had no choice but to learn how to jump. Without any support, she was able to walk in the air. This was something that went against science, but the uncle, a scientist, still tried his best to make her practice. The key point was that the uncle was not a good teacher. Every time she did not do well, he would disdain and humiliate her in all aspects. Why hadn't she left this world yet? Fuck. When would these days come to an end? Ning Shu felt uncomfortable as she watched the uncle record data in his notebook every day. The school doctor looked at Ning Shu, shook his head and said disdainfully, a zombie that retains consciousness is really incomparable to a zombie that regains consciousness. Ning Shu was speechless. Ning Shu also felt that in her heart, she still thought of herself as a human, just wearing the skin of a zombie. She was different from mutated zombies. Fortunately, Ning Shu's speed was very fast now, and she could walk in the air. Back in the lab, the uncle gave Ning Shu a small bottle of gene fluid. Ning Shu was very grateful to the school doctor uncle and showed a ferocious smile. The school doctor uncle turned his head and ignored her. Ning Shu drank the gene fluid. She felt that her body did not need this gene fluid because her hunger was not as strong as before. She also felt that this body had entered a bottleneck. It should be able to evolve, but she did not know how to evolve. This body was already very strong, with infinite strength. It could fly without wings and walk in the air. Ning Shu tried to open her mouth, but could only make simple syllables. Now Ning Shu had to learn to speak like a child. The school doctor uncle ate the biscuits, turned his head and looked at Ning Shu, but did not speak. Ning Shu was confused by his stare. She looked at him with inquiring eyes and stuttered, what's wrong? The school doctor uncle frowned, looked a little puzzled and said, you said that your body is now under advanced genetic modification. The genes will automatically modify the body's defects. Why is your face still like this? Ning Shu, fuck, are you mocking me for being ugly? Ning Shu really wanted to push the school doctor down, bite his neck, and dig out his heart. The uncle's words really hurt his self-esteem. Venomous tongue, mysophobia, obsessive-compulsive disorder. Uncle, no one in the world can save you. You are destined to be alone for the rest of your life. After resting in the laboratory for a night, the school doctor gave Ning Shu a bag. Ning Shu opened the bag and saw that there was quite a lot of gene fluid inside. They were all in small bottles and there was quite a lot of it. Ning Shu was confused. Why did the uncle give her so much geno fluid? The school doctor did not say anything. Ning Shu followed him out of the lab, and he felt that the atmosphere was not right. Ning Shu very obediently climbed onto the roof of the car. The school doctor uncle Ning Shu waved his hand and said, sit in the car. What was wrong with him today? She felt that there was something wrong with the uncle. Ning Shu sat in the car silently. The school doctor drove the car aimlessly. She didn't know where he was going. Duh, uncle. Ning Shu shouted. The uncle stepped on the brake and looked at Ning Shu. Fuck, if you have something to say, just say it. People are originally cold and ascetic. Uncle, do you know that your ghost value has reached max, get off. The school doctor uncle Ning Shu said, bring your bag. Ning Shu said, oh, and got off the car. The school doctor uncle also got off the car. He walked in front of Ning Shu and said, you are a zombie. You should adapt to your new life. Ning Shu blinked. What does this mean? This geno fluid should be enough for you to drink for a while. Your body doesn't need any more geno fluid. I have more important things to do, so I won't take you. The school doctor uncle said indifferently. Fuck, the uncle is going to abandon me. Before she was tortured by the uncle, she was fine, but now she is going to be separated from the uncle. Ning Shu's heart suddenly felt sour. The uncle can be considered as her second parent. Ning Shu stretched out her hand and pulled the uncle's sleeve. She slowly said, Uncle, take me with you. My fighting ability is off the charts. The school doctor uncle stretched out his finger and touched Ning Shu's forehead. He sneered and said, I don't want to take a sloppy woman. Since we are going to be separated, I might as well say goodbye first. Ning Shu was speechless. The school doctor uncle got on the car. The car was very fast and disappeared in front of Ning Shu. Ning Shu felt even more desolate. Now the situation was like releasing a wild animal back to nature. Ning Shu thought for a while and chased in the direction where the uncle disappeared. However, she didn't find the uncle. Instead, she encountered a lot of zombies. These zombies didn't attack Ning Shu. Obviously, they treated her as one of their kind. Maybe it was because Ning Shu was more advanced than these zombies. Some of the zombies actually followed behind Ning Shu. Ning Shu used all the horsepower to get rid of these zombies. She didn't want to be followed by a group of roaring zombies wherever she went. It was a torture to her ears. It wasn't easy to find the laboratory that she was in before. However, there was no one in the laboratory. Some of the things had been destroyed by the uncle. The laboratory was empty. Ning Shu deeply sighed. Where did the uncle go? Then where should she go now? Ning Shu was suddenly at a loss. She didn't know where to go. The mission had been carried out until now. Why didn't they let her go back? Ning Shu left the laboratory. She didn't have a specific destination. She had to find a target for herself. Ning Shu thought for a while and decided to find young Phoenix for revenge. With a target in her heart, she felt more at ease. Ning Shu wandered around every day, looking for human bases. Occasionally, she would encounter mutated zombies. If they didn't provoke Ning Shu wouldn't fight with them. What made Ning Shu speechless was that there were always zombies wandering behind her. What was attracting these zombies? Ning Shu touched the bag on her waist. Yes, it was the gene fluid. Now this thing was her food. She didn't want to share it with other zombies. Moreover, she didn't know where the school doctor uncle went. She didn't even know if she could see the gene fluid again in the future. Now, Ning Shu wouldn't be hungry for half a month. When she was really hungry, she would drink a little of the gene fluid. Ning Shu walked unsteadily. She actually had the feeling of walking the world with a sword. Sometimes, she looked coldly at the battle between humans and zombies. Seeing humans being torn apart by zombies, Ning Shu didn't feel anything in her heart. From Ning Shu's point of view, zombies and humans were all for each other's survival. They restricted and balanced each other. There was no major right or wrong. Ning Shu originally wanted to drive. Although walking didn't make her feel tired, it was very boring. However, she didn't have the same skill as the uncle to steal a car. Roar, a very familiar roar came from far away to Ning Shu's ears. Ning Shu suddenly became alert. Fuck, if I can't find young Phoenix, I'll take revenge on you. Chapter 114. Ning Shu ran in the direction of the roar, looking for the mutated zombie to take revenge. When Ning Shu found the place, she saw the mutated zombie floating in the air from a distance. Seeing this zombie, Ning Shu's eyes turned red. When enemies meet, their eyes turn red. Fuck, she had never suffered such a big loss. Below the mutated zombie was an army of zombies. A team of humans was surrounded by zombies. The paranormals in the team struggled to kill the zombies and protect the supplies in the truck. Ning Shu casually glanced around and saw young Phoenix in the team. Young Phoenix was wearing tight black leather pants that accentuated her curves. When she was killing zombies, her black hair fluttered in the wind, making her look devilish and sexy. She really didn't die. At that time, her wooden stick had already pierced through young Phoenix's body, but she was still fine. Ning Shu sneered. It was really a small world. She looked around, except for young Phoenix, she didn't know anyone else in the team. Young Phoenix actually came out to look for supplies. Roar, the mutated zombie floating in the air suddenly turned its head and roared twice at Ning Shu. Ning Shu listened to the roar of the zombie and felt that it had a certain frequency, transmitting some kind of message. Roar, the mutated zombie roared twice at Ning Shu, this time the roar was a lot more urgent. Ning Shu understood that the zombie wanted her to fight. Fight your sister, I am here to duel with you. The actions of the mutated zombie attracted the attention of the humans. Young Phoenix looked over and saw Ning Shu. She looked surprised and killed the zombie in front of her with an icicle. She looked at Ning Shu with vigilance. Ning Shu's body floated up and walked toward the mutated zombie. The mutated zombie looked at Ning Shu with a tilted head, its nose moved, and looked a little puzzled. It was sure that the person in front of it was the same kind. Ning Shu floated in the air and looked at young Phoenix below. She smiled and said to young Phoenix, "Long time no see." As soon as Ning Shu spoke, the young Phoenix's expression became even more surprised. She shouted, "Hua, you're still alive." Young Phoenix looked around and didn't see the man who used to be with Ning Shu. Now that she saw Ning Shu walking in the air like a zombie, young Phoenix's face twisted. "What the hell are you?" Young Phoenix asked Ning Shu. Zombies couldn't speak, but Flower could. Ning Shu crossed her arms and looked at young Phoenix, saying, "Guess. Flower, you've become a zombie. Even if you've become a mutant zombie, the nucleus in your head is mine. You used to be a good-for-nothing person. Even if you've become a zombie, you're still a good-for-nothing. I'll kindly accept your nucleus." Young Phoenix raised her eyebrows. Her whole body seemed to be unusually cold and her temperament was ice-cold. Ning Shu touched his head with some doubts. What is a nucleus? He felt that after not going out for a while, he could keep up with the changes in society. The icicle in young Phoenix's hand shot toward Ning Shu. Ning Shu just moved his body slightly and dodged her attack. When young Phoenix saw that Ning Shu had dodged her attack so easily, her face turned cold. She bit her lip and reached out to touch her abdomen. There were still scars on her abdomen. She almost died that time. If it wasn't for Lone Wolf's efforts to save her, she really would have gone to see the King of Hell. Now that she saw Ning Shu, especially when she saw that Ning Shu had become stronger, her heart was particularly angry. She continued to attack Ning Shu with her icicles. Ning Shu flashed directly in front of young Phoenix. Then he clenched his fist and hit young Phoenix's head. Young Phoenix's pupils shrank. She immediately condensed an ice shield to block Ning Shu's attack. Ning Shu sneered and used more strength. He directly broke the ice shield and then hit young Phoenix's head. Young Phoenix's face turned pale. Looking at the fist in front of her, young Phoenix's face uncontrollably became ferocious. It was too fast. She didn't even have a chance to dodge. Just when Ning Shu thought that his fist would explode young Phoenix's head, a person suddenly appeared in front of him. He hugged young Phoenix and used his back to block Ning Shu's fist. Ning Shu was stunned. He wanted to retract his fist, but it still hit the person's back. The man and young Phoenix rolled a short distance away. Ning Shu frowned and looked at the man who was protecting young Phoenix in his arms. The man was vomiting blood, but he anxiously asked young Phoenix how she was. Young Phoenix was shocked. She wiped the blood from the corner of his mouth in panic. Her voice trembled as she cried, Lin Wen, why are you so stupid? As long as you're okay. It's good that you're okay." Lin Wen's mouth kept bleeding as she spoke. Young Phoenix turned her head and looked at Ning Shu with hatred in her red eyes. "Flower, I want you dead. How dare you hurt him? I want you dead." Ning Shu was speechless. Ning Shu inexplicably felt that he was a villain. Then, the man who risked his life to save young Phoenix should be the supporting male lead. Therefore, every time the male and female leads were in danger, someone would come to their rescue. In the end, justice prevailed over evil. Bah, she was not evil. There was no such thing as evil or not. It was just that she was in a different position. Should she wait for the female lead to take the crystal nucleus out of her head? A strong force erupted from young Phoenix's body. This force made Ning Shu narrow his eyes. It was mixed with the smell of zombies. Did superpowered people use zombies' crystal nuclei to improve their superpowers? This power was not weak, and Ning Shu was very vigilant. She floated in the air and looked down at the young phoenix. The young phoenix's face was filled with grief and indignation. It looked at Ning Shu with eyes full of hatred. Ning Shu was speechless. In this situation, shouldn't the supporting male lead be treated first? Even if he killed her, it would delay the treatment. Ning Shu felt that his heart was broken. Young Phoenix's body erupted with dense and powerful icicles, sweeping towards Ning Shu. Ning Shu increased his speed to avoid these icicles. Flower, if you have the ability, don't dodge. Fight me one-on-one. Young Phoenix shouted angrily. Why don't you dodge? You're just a target. Ning Shu sneered in his heart. Ah! A mournful and painful voice sounded. Ning Shu looked over and was stunned. The supporting male lead abandoned by Young Phoenix could not be saved. Young Phoenix turned around and saw that Lin Wen's heart had been taken out by another mutated zombie. Young Phoenix's eyes were bloodshot. Her face was filled with grief and anger as she released icicles towards the mutated zombie. However, the mutated zombie casually dodged and floated in the air. He held the heart in his hand and looked indifferent. Lin Wen, Lin Wen. The noble and cold young phoenix held the man's body and cried. Young Phoenix, you must be happy. The man's head tilted and then he stopped breathing. Chapter 115. Ning Shu witnessed a touching scene where the supporting male sacrificed his life for the female lead. Ning Shu's heart was filled with an indescribable feeling. In Ning Shu's view, this person called Lin Wen was just a tool to stop her, a tool to save the female lead. If young Phoenix didn't insist on killing her and ran away with this man, she might not have died. There was really someone who sacrificed so much for the person he loved. He didn't ask for anything, and when he died, he still wanted the person he loved to be with another man. Really, stupid, so selfless. It felt like a person who lived for the female lead. Didn't he have his own thoughts? Ning Shu was also drunk. Someone was injured, yet he insisted on taking revenge at this time. Saving a life was more important than anything else. Ning Shu looked at the mutated zombie in front of her. The mutated zombie was holding a heart that was still dripping blood. Ning Shu was speechless when she saw this. At this time, not far away, there was an army green tank driving towards them. Ning Shu was stunned for a moment. Fuck, it was actually a tank. Moreover, these tanks were actually equipped with long-range rockets. Ning Shu's heart spontaneously felt a sense of danger. The mutated zombie also roared, and the ordinary zombies immediately rushed towards the tank. However, this tank was very domineering and directly ran over. When young Phoenix saw the tank, her face suddenly showed a surprised expression. Then she raised her face and looked at Ning Shu. She said in a fierce voice, "Flower, your time has come. You killed Lin Wen. I will avenge Lin Wen." Ning Shu pointed at the mutated zombie and said, "I didn't kill her. He killed her. Can't you see that your spare tire's heart is still in his hand?" The mutated zombie that was pointed at by Ning Shu turned his head. Ning Shu roared. "Today, all of you will die." Young Phoenix was so angry that her face turned red. "Flower, I will not only dig out your head, I will also throw you into the research institute and make you suffer." Ning Shu patted his chest. He was so scared. Ning Shu looked at the approaching tank, especially the black rocket launcher. The sense of danger in Ning Shu's heart grew stronger. He turned around and ran. Flesh and blood could not withstand firearms, especially high-temperature weapons. They could directly vaporize a person. "Flower, why are you running? Aren't you very capable?" Young Phoenix shouted angrily when she saw Ning Shu run away without any integrity. Ning Shu simply ignored young Phoenix's words. If he didn't run, he would die. The colossal zombie saw Ning Shu running away and hesitated for a moment before chasing after Ning Shu. Ning Shu turned his head and saw the colossal zombie. He almost fell from the sky. Fuck, I haven't even settled the score with you yet, and you've come here yourself. That's good, I won't have to look for you everywhere in the future. Ning Shu sped up, and the colossal zombie also sped up. After running for a long time, Ning Shu found an abandoned warehouse and planned to live there. Although he was now a zombie, he was still a human. There was no way to eat and sleep in the open. The colossal zombie followed Ning Shu into the warehouse. Ning Shu turned his head and looked at the colossal zombie. His expression was very cold. Zombies have a numb expression, and a pair of gray eyes gave people a feeling of horror. The colossal zombie handed the bloody heart in his hand to Ning Shu. It seemed that he wanted to be friends with Ning Shu. Ning Shu shook his head and did not take the heart. He was a zombie that had broken away from vulgar interests. He absolutely would not eat this thing. Roar. The variant zombie roared at Ning Shu. Ning Shu ignored him. The colossal zombie saw that Ning Shu really did not want it, and then he ate the heart himself. Ning Shu stretched his neck and swallowed a mouthful of saliva. It was too fucking disgusting. I said, don't eat this. It's useless. Ning Shu could feel that the colossal zombie had evolved to a bottleneck like her. It was not enough to just eat the corpses of human paranormals to supplement the missing genes. The colossal zombie did not understand what Ning Shu was saying. After eating the heart, Ning Shu roared. Ning Shu stretched out his hand and punched the colossal zombie's face. The result was like punching a piece of iron, very hard. Ning Shu stretched out his foot and kicked the colossal zombie's stomach. The man was sent flying with a kick. He crashed into the wall, causing it to crumble. Roar. Ning Shu roared angrily. It seemed to be questioning Ning Shu why he attacked him. The colossal zombie probably felt wronged. He had already given his heart to her, why did she still attack him? Ning Shu sneered. If it was not for this bastard in front of her, she would not have become like this. If it was not for this uncle, she would have become a zombie without consciousness. She could not go back to the system space. From then on, she would become a zombie controlled by appetite. She would not know when her head would be blown off. Thinking of this, Ning Shu felt cold. He felt that the colossal zombie in front of him was more and more disgusting. Ning Shu became angrier and angrier. He beat the colossal zombie. The colossal zombie roared to summon nearby zombies while fighting with Ning Shu. A pair of gray eyes looked at Ning Shu. Its pupils trembled, and it roared at Ning Shu. Pang! The colossal zombie fell to the ground. Ning Shu stretched out his foot and stomped on the colossal zombie. The ground cracked, but the colossal zombie was still alive. Ning Shu sighed and took back his foot. It was not easy to kill this kind of zombie. Ning Shu roared. Ning Shu dug his ears. If you want to talk, then talk. Don't always howl. If you don't know how to talk, then shut up. Roar, Ning Shu. Ning Shu looked at the colossal zombie vigilantly. Seeing that the colossal zombie had no intention to attack, he went into the warehouse and prepared to find a place to sleep. The colossal zombie also followed Ning Shu in. Seeing Ning Shu lying down, he also laid down. Ning Shu whispered. Ning Shu saw the colossal zombie's actions and suddenly understood why the colossal zombie followed him. It was to learn. Although the colossal zombie had powerful abilities and was rational, but it acted based on instinct. Fuck, why do I feel like I got into trouble again? I don't care about the grudge of the claw, you should hurry up and leave. Ning Shu turned over, and the colossal zombie next to him also turned over. Ning Shu, what the hell, what is this? Ning Shu was especially angry. He sat up and stared at the colossal zombie. The colossal zombie turned his head and looked at Ning Shu. "Hurry up and leave." Ning Shu roared. "Play." The colossal zombie's pronunciation was not accurate. His eyes were staring at Ning Shu's lips. "Ning Shu, go." When Ning Shu spoke, his lips moved exaggeratedly to let the colossal zombie see clearly. "Beat." When the colossal zombie spoke, it was like air was leaking from his throat. He always made a sound. "Zo, go." Ning Shu roared. "Go." This time the colossal zombie finally pronounced the words correctly, but it felt very awkward. Ning Shu felt very tired and laid down. The colossal zombie next to him kept repeating, "Go, beat, go." Chapter 116. Beside Ning Shu was a repeater. Whatever Ning Shu said, it would repeat. Over and over again, it made Ning Shu's head hurt. Why did she always meet such a weirdo? And no matter what she did, the mutated zombie would follow. She couldn't kill it, so it followed her every day. It made Ning Shu feel so bad. Her hair that was washed by the uncle was now in knots. She missed the uncle so much. She suddenly understood that the uncle's feelings towards her were the same as her facing this zombie. It was so stupid that she wanted to strangle him. Compared to the mutated zombie, Ning Shu felt that she was quite smart. If the school doctor uncle faced this zombie, Uncle would have killed this zombie a long time ago. "Flower, my name is Flower." Ning Shu pointed to herself and said to the mutated zombie word by word. "Flower." The mutated zombie followed. "Flower, duo, air." Ning Shu repeated. The mutated zombie, flower, air. Well, these three words were too difficult for the mutated zombie. Ning Shu was too lazy to correct him. "Flower is flower. Flower, flower." As long as the mutated zombie learned a word, it would keep repeating it, just like the band tightening spell. Sometimes the mutated zombie would run out and come back with a bloody heart for Ning Shu to eat. Ning Shu, after explaining to this guy for a long time, he finally understood that she didn't eat this thing and didn't give her bloody heart. Ning Shu saw him like this and didn't reject him. He guessed that this guy didn't remember that he had hurt her. After all, there were too many people who died in his hands. However, Ning Shu taught the zombie seriously. Two zombies could communicate with each other. In order to facilitate communication, Ning Shu gave the zombie a name, Xiao Ming. Then the mutated zombie happily accepted the name. Every day, it would either be Xiao Ming or Flower. After staying in the abandoned warehouse for a long time, Ning Shu also felt bored. He decided to find Young Phoenix and go to the base where the officer was. Young Phoenix should also be there. "Little Ming, I'm leaving. You don't have to follow me." Ning Shu planned to wander around alone. It would be good if he could find Young Phoenix. However, Ning Shu felt that he would find Little Phoenix. Since Little Phoenix hated her so much, the plot would give Little Phoenix a chance to take revenge. Xiao Ming looked at Ning Shu and stammered, "Go, where?" "I don't know." Ning Shu shrugged. "I'll go," Xiao Ming said. "Follow me if you want." In any case, he had a powerful companion. The most important thing was that this guy had the ability to summon zombies. Ning Shu had always wondered why she couldn't summon zombies. Then, Ning Shu dragged a little tail behind him and wandered around aimlessly every day. When he had nothing to do, he would teach Little Ming how to speak. Little Ming, on the other hand, became more and more fluent in speaking. Ning Shu tentatively took out the gene fluid. He wanted to see if Little Ming would steal his gene fluid. It turned out that Ning Shu thought too much. Little Ming didn't seem to like drinking the gene fluid. Between the heart and the gene fluid, Little Ming firmly chose the heart. Ning Shu guessed that Little Ming was used to one kind of food and didn't want to change his diet. Therefore, when Ning Shu was hungry, he would generously take out the gene fluid and drink it. After walking for several days, he basically didn't see anyone. All he saw were wandering zombies. He couldn't see half a human figure. This gave Ning Shu the illusion that human beings were extinct. Ning Shu said to Little Ming, "In the future, don't kill people, especially people with abilities." "Why?" Little Ming looked at Ning Shu in confusion. To Little Ming, humans were just food that he could take as he pleased. "Everyone has been killed. What are you going to eat in the future?" Ning Shu said snappily. It was difficult for human beings to survive. Ordinary zombies were tortured by hunger. Living was worse than death. Variant zombies were too strong. Little Ming seemed to understand, but his eyes turned. Apparently, he was thinking. Ning Shu was thinking that humans now seemed to be able to use the energy nuclei of zombies to enhance their abilities. He estimated that it wouldn't be long before humans became strong. Ning Shu pried open the heads of zombies. Some zombies had an irregular crystal in their heads. Some zombies had it. Some zombies didn't. Some were only the size of a grain of rice, while others were the size of a thumb. Ning Shu guessed that this should be the source of the zombies' power. Ning Shu asked Little Ming if he had such a thing. Little Ming nodded. Ning Shu touched his head. He suddenly wanted to know if his head also had this kind of lump. This kind of foreign object in the head didn't hurt or itch. It felt very strange. It felt like zombies and humans were opposed to each other, but they also needed each other. Zombies wanted to eat humans, and humans needed zombie nuclei to enhance their abilities. He didn't know when this kind of struggle would end. He didn't want to destroy this plane. Ning Shu and Little Ming wandered around for a long time. Finally, they saw a car. Little Ming reflexively wanted to gather the zombies, but he was stopped by Ning Shu. Little Ming looked at Ning Shu in confusion and asked, "Why?" "Let's secretly follow and see which base these humans are from." Ning Shu said. "Why?" Little Ming asked again. "I'm looking for someone." "Of course, we're following." Ning Shu said. "Why don't we go and ask?" Little Ming asked again. "Damn, 100,000 whys." Ning Shu said unhappily, "Just listen to me. If we go and ask like this, we'll be attacked." "I can, call the monsters." Little Ming said. "I'm not afraid of them." The monsters that Little Ming was talking about were ordinary zombies that didn't have any intelligence. Little Ming also gave these zombies such a fashionable name. Feeling that the topic was getting more and more off topic, Ning Shu said directly, "Shut up. We'll follow." "Shut up, shut up, shut up." Little Ming turned on the repeater mode. Ning Shu was speechless. Ning Shu followed the car in front stealthily. He couldn't be discovered by these people. Little Ming, who was behind, followed suit. Every time he saw Little Ming learn the good and bad things, Ning Shu felt guilty. He didn't know what Little Ming would be like in the future. Ning Shu chanted Amitabha in his heart. He hoped that Little Ming would be a good youth in the future. Ning Shu followed the car to the base and entered the base. Looking at the base, Ning Shu could only sigh silently. It was fate that brought her to the previous base. Was she courting death by running in front of the young phoenix? Seeing the base, Little Ming reflexively wanted to gather his monsters. Ning Shu pulled him and said, "Let's find a place to rest next to the base." "Why?" Little Ming asked. "I'm not sure if the person we're looking for is in the base." Ning Shu replied. "If the monsters come, they'll come out. They're afraid of the monsters." Little Ming said seriously. "No, they're more afraid of you." Ning Shu heard Little Ming's simple and crude method and had a feeling that he couldn't refute. "Don't bother. Do your own thing." Ning Shu put on a serious look. Little Ming said, "Oh. Chapter 117. Ning Shu found an abandoned building next to the base. Then, she wandered around the base and eavesdropped on other people's conversations. Xiao Ming followed behind Ning Shu. He did not know what she was doing. In Xiao Ming's opinion, what Ning Shu was doing was meaningless. Anything that was not for hunting was meaningless. Ning Shu did not know that Xiao Ming despised her in his heart. She also got the information she wanted. Lone Wolf and Young Phoenix were in this base. Lone Wolf and Young Phoenix's ability levels were very high. They were very respected in the base and were even about to become the leaders of the base. Young Phoenix was the base's goddess. Coupled with her ability, she was called the Goddess of Ice. Goddess. Ning Shu was envious. She had never been called a goddess. God was indeed fair. If he gave you an ugly appearance, he would definitely give you a low IQ to avoid imbalance and disharmony. Ning Shu wanted to know how the officer was doing. Now that Lone Wolf had replaced the base, what was the situation with the original higher-ups of the base? She felt that things were not looking good. Okay, let's go back. Ning Shu said lightly. After guarding the base for a few days, Lone Wolf and Young Phoenix did not leave the base at all. This made Ning Shu very disappointed. Xiao Ming looked at Ning Shu and asked, "What are you doing?" "Gathering information." Ning Shu said. Xiao Ming said, "Let's gather the monsters." Okay. Ning Shu nodded. Hearing that Ning Shu had finally agreed to gather the monsters, Xiao Ming's pupils trembled. Then, he floated in the air and roared at the top of his lungs. In a short while, zombies came from all directions from the base. The base also became restless in an instant. Ear-piercing and urgent alarms rang out. In an instant, many people rushed out of the base's entrance and looked at Xiao Ming, who was floating in the air. Ning Shu stood among the zombies and did not attract attention. He patrolled the base and did not see the officer. In the past, when the zombies attacked the base, the officer would organize the resistance. Why didn't he come today? Could something have happened? Ning Shu frowned as he looked at Lone Wolf and Young Phoenix, who were standing at the front. Their robes fluttered in the wind, making them look like an immortal couple. What surprised Ning Shu the most was that under everyone's gaze, Lone Wolf actually floated in midair, facing Xiao Ming from a distance. Xiao Ming sized up the man in front of him. His expression was solemn. This man was not weak. Ning Shu's face was also solemn. Lone Wolf's strength had increased so quickly. It seemed that while the zombies were evolving, the human strength was also increasing. Compared to the vigilance of Ning Shu and Xiao Ming, the morale of the humans was high. Everyone looked at the floating Lone Wolf in awe. Lone Wolf condensed a ball of lightning in his hand and looked at Little Ming coldly. Little Ming looked at the energy ball in Lone Wolf's hand with caution. "Lone Wolf, this is the zombie that killed Lin 1. Young Phoenix pointed at Little Ming and shouted at Lone Wolf with a face full of hatred. Lone Wolf squinted his eyes and released his superpower at Xiao Ming. Lightning flashed and looked very dangerous. Xiao Ming dodged the lightning-like superpower, but the superpower hit an ordinary zombie and turned it into black ash. Ning Shu was speechless. It was not directly burned, but directly turned into ash. The power was too terrifying. Little Ming looked at the unlucky zombie that was left with a handful of black ash, and then looked at Lone Wolf with unprecedented vigilance. Ning Shu made a gesture to Little Ming to run. Little Ming was confused. Ning Shu saw that he did not pay attention to him at all, so he shouted at him, "Let's go." Ning Shu's voice suddenly attracted Young Phoenix's attention. Young Phoenix saw Ning Shu in the group of zombies and roared, "Flower! Flower, come here and die." Young Phoenix's face was ferocious. Ning Shu roared, "I want to avenge Lin 1. Ning Shu rolled his eyes and shouted at Little Ming, "Let's go." Little Ming turned around and rushed to Ning Shu's side. He was ready to run with Ning Shu. Lone Wolf saw that the target was running away and wanted to chase after them. This zombie must be very powerful. If he got the crystal, his power would be upgraded again. Little Ming looked back and saw that the human was chasing after them. He quickly roared and urged the ordinary zombies to attack the base. Lone Wolf saw that the base was about to fall, so he could only turn back to kill zombies. Ning Shu and Little Ming ran for a while and stopped. Ning Shu sat on the ground and Little Ming also sat on the ground. They took a wooden stick and wrote on the ground. "Flower, the human today is very strong," Little Ming said to Ning Shu. Ning Shu nodded. He was very strong. His cultivation was like sitting on a rocket. Ning Shu said, "Don't go to the base if you don't have to." "Flower, have you found him?" Little Ming didn't forget their purpose. Ning Shu shook his head. Today, the zombies attacked the base, but the officer didn't show up. Lone Wolf seemed to have become the uncrowned king of the base. The worst result was that Lone Wolf killed the officer. Ning Shu felt depressed and said to Little Ming, "We'll keep an eye on that base in the future." Little Ming said, "I want to eat that human's heart." Ning Shu was speechless. Good ambition. Then Ning Shu and Little Ming formed a wretched two-man team and wandered around the base. As long as the humans in the base left the base, they would play all kinds of tricks. This made young Phoenix and Lone Wolf very unhappy. They formed a special team to deal with Ning Shu and Little Ming. Little Ming learned a lot of shameless behavior from Ning Shu, which caused his pure mind to become dark. He often set up traps and things like that to trick humans. Every time Ning Shu saw it, he felt guilty. Little Ming changed from a person who tore humans apart with his bare hands to a zombie who tortured humans. She couldn't escape the blame. Lone Wolf and young Phoenix were so determined to kill Ning Shu and Little Ming. In addition to taking revenge and eliminating the danger of the base, they wanted to get the crystal cores more. The pressure on Ning Shu and Little Ming from the base was increasing. Young Phoenix and Lone Wolf seemed to be fighting with them. They sent more and more superpowered people, and even had firearms. Ning Shu and Little Ming's advantage in fighting with them was getting smaller and smaller. Little Ming would summon a lot of zombies to consume the enemy's strength. Sometimes, Lone Wolf would even lead the team in person, just to take the crystal cores out of Little Ming's head. Every time they saw Lone Wolf leading the team, Ning Shu and Little Ming would run away directly. The power of thunder was the most effective against zombies. Damn, they were really shameless. They ran away when they couldn't beat them. This made young Phoenix and Lone Wolf so angry that they bit their cheeks. Ning Shu felt that he was digging his own grave. He would be killed sooner or later if he went against the male and female protagonists. Ning Shu looked at Little Ming, who was writing and drawing, and said, "Don't go to the base with me in the future. Don't be killed by the base people." He was really embarrassed to ask Little Ming to tease the male and female protagonists. Chapter 118. Xiao Ming shouldn't be involved in the grudge between her and the male and female leads. If Xiao Ming was really killed and his nucleus was taken out, Ning Shu would feel guilty. After all, they had been together for so long, and there were some feelings between them. Xiao Ming looked at Ning Shu, and when he heard that Ning Shu didn't want him to follow, he asked excitedly, "Why? You will die." Ning Shu said. "I won't." Xiao Ming said seriously, "I won't die." "TSK, you won't die just because you said so. Okay, if you want to follow then follow." Ning Shu told Xiao Ming, "If there is danger, quickly run, don't talk about moral integrity." "What is moral integrity?" Xiao Ming tilted his head and asked Ning Shu. Ning Shu said faintly, "I don't know what moral integrity is." "Hua, look, doesn't this look like you?" Xiao Ming pointed at the painting on the ground. The painting was very abstract, and Ning Shu looked at it for a long time before she realized that Xiao Ming was painting her. "Your eyes are too small, I have big eyes." Ning Shu pointed at the painting on the ground. "I have an oval face, you painted me into a flat face, the difference is too big, practice hard." Xiao Ming looked at Ning Shu and said, "That's right. Do you understand the difference between romanticism and realism? Do you understand romanticism?" Xiao Ming, "I don't understand." Ning Shu and Xiao Ming returned to the surroundings of the base, squatting around the base, causing trouble for the base and then quickly running away, repeating the cycle again and again. Ning Shu and Xiao Ming's actions made the atmosphere of the entire base tense. The two mutated zombies fought and ran away, ran and ran back. They were slippery, and couldn't be killed, which made people very angry. Ning Shu took out the gene fluid and drank it, and asked Xiao Ming, "Do you want to drink?" Xiao Ming shook his head, and his eyebrows showed some rejection of the gene fluid. Ning Shu directly opened his mouth and poured the gene fluid into his mouth, and said, "Drink, this thing is good for you." Xiao Ming smacked his lips with a look of disdain. "I don't like this," Xiao Ming said, feeling wronged. "Shu, don't talk. Someone is coming out of the base." Ning Shu was surprised to see a car come out of the base. It was night time, and people rarely left the base at night. People's vision was greatly affected at night, but zombies weren't affected at all. Therefore, it was strange for someone to leave the base in the middle of the night. "Should we summon some monsters?" Little Ming asked. Ning Shu shook his head. "Let's see what's going on first. Let's follow them." Ning Shu planned to follow the car. At this time, another car came out of the base and chased in the direction of the first car. When Ning Shu chased after them with Xiao Ming, he found that the two sides had already started fighting. The dazzling superpowers were exceptionally dazzling in the dark night. "What are they doing?" Little Ning Shu asked. Ning Shu squinted his eyes and looked at the battle in front of him. When he heard Xiao Ming's question, he answered, "They are fighting." "Why?" "They are all humans." Xiao Ming asked again. He had never been attacked by a zombie before, so he couldn't figure it out. "The human world is very complicated. You won't understand," Ning Shu said. Ning Shu looked at the two groups of people and finally saw the officer. The officer's hair was white, and he was much older than before. He was fighting with all his might. The officer had also awakened a superpower. It was a surprise attack superpower, but it wasn't very strong. It could only be used with guns to kill enemies. "Xiao Ming, hurry up and summon the zombies." Ning Shu saw that the officer's side was at a disadvantage, so he quickly said to Xiao Ming, "Roar." Xiao Ming immediately roared at the top of his lungs. His roar was extremely penetrating, causing Ning Shu's head to shake twice. Hearing Xiao Ming's roar, the two sides stopped fighting. They looked nervous. One side finally got into the car and was ready to run. Ning Shu saw that the people in the base had left, so he quickly ran to the officer. However, he was pointed at by a black muzzle. The dazzling light of the flashlight shone on her face. Ning Shu quickly said, "Officer, I am Hua Er." The officer's expression couldn't be seen in the dark. He sounded a little confused. "Hua Er, weren't you killed by a zombie? I heard from young Phoenix that you became a zombie. How can a zombie talk? This is very complicated." "Officer, put down the gun first," Ning Shu said. "Put down the gun," the officer ordered. He pointed the flashlight at Ning Shu and looked up and down. "Are you a human or a zombie now?" "Zombie," Ning Shu said honestly. Hearing that it was a zombie, the other people who had just put down their guns immediately pointed at Ning Shu and Xiao Ming. Xiao Ming roared at these people. Ning Shu said, "Officer, I won't hurt you. It's so late. Why did you come out of the base? Why are those people chasing you?" Ning Shu asked. Put down the gun. The officer ordered. Then he said to Hua, it's good that you are alive. Lone Wolf and Young Phoenix took over the base and betrayed the country. The country's top officials were basically killed by Lone Wolf. I drank the gene fluid you gave me and was lucky enough to awaken my ability. Lone Wolf didn't kill me because he wanted to subdue me. Today, I found an opportunity to escape with my subordinates, but they immediately found me. The officer saw Ning Shu and the mutated zombie together. He knew that Hua was a zombie. He didn't know why Hua became a zombie and still had her memories. Sure enough, it seemed that the male and female lead were still on the path of the overlord of the base. Ning Shu asked, so where are you going next? Find a base to start over. We can't stay in that base anymore. It's the world of Lone Wolf and Young Phoenix. When the officer talked about Young Phoenix and Lone Wolf, his tone was very complicated. He was betrayed by the subordinates he brought up. Ning Shu thought for a moment and said, Officer, I'll send you to find a new base. This way, you can avoid being harassed by zombies on the way. This. The officer froze for a moment and said with a sigh, no need, we can go by ourselves. Officer, you don't have to be so polite with me. The two of us will follow you all the way. When you find a new base, we will leave immediately. Ning Shu suggested. It was good to do something for the original owner who loved him like a father. Well, you just follow from a distance. The officer walked to Ning Shu. Ning Shu whispered, don't follow too close. People's hearts are not what they used to be. Now, mutated zombie nuclei are very precious. Ning Shu nodded. Then Ning Shu and Xiao Ming followed the team from a distance and accompanied the officer to find a new base. The people in the team usually couldn't feel the existence of Ning Shu and Xiao Ming. Along the way, there were no zombies that attacked them. This kind of situation made the people in the team become ambitious. They even instigated the commanding officer to control Ning Shu. Every time he heard such words, Little Ming would tear the person who spoke to him apart, pull out his heart, and chew it in front of everyone. Sure enough, people's hearts were not what they used to be. These people were not grateful to her and Xiao Ming for escorting them. Instead, they had such thoughts. Humans were greedy. Chapter 119. After a while, the team finally arrived at the new base. Ning Shu saw that the officer had safely entered the base, so he turned around and left with Little Ming. Although she could think and speak, she was still an alien to humans. Those who were not of the same race would be punished. Ning Shu had never thought of living with the officer. This was because it was impossible. Ning Shu repeatedly emphasized to this body that she was now a different life form compared to humans. There was no way she could coexist with humans. Ning Shu was afraid that after he left, the original owner of the body would still want to live with humans. Flower. Little Ming shouted for Ning Shu. Ning Shu turned to look at him and asked, what's wrong? Flower, don't live with humans in the future. Humans are too annoying, Little Ming said to Ning Shu. Ning Shu nodded. I won't. Okay. Little Ming's tone was very happy. This made Ning Shu feel very relaxed. Ning Shu and Little Ming found a place to rest. Actually, they did not need to rest, but Ning Shu was still a human. Habits could not be changed. Little Ming seemed to be used to this, too. Ning Shu looked at Little Ming, who was sitting beside him, and said, Little Ming, I'll have to ask you to take care of me in the future. Take good care of me. Little Ming looked at Ning Shu and nodded. I'll take care of you. Please don't let me live with humans. If I suddenly go crazy and insist on being close to humans, you have to stop me, okay? If I'm killed by humans and they dig out my crystal, then no one will be with you, Ning Shu said half-threateningly. Little Ming looked at Ning Shu seriously and said, I won't let humans kill you. Very good. Ning Shu closed his eyes and thought. He did not know when the mission would end. Ning Shu felt a little guilty. He did not know what the mission was like. He felt that the system had completely disappeared. It had not spoken for a long time. Xiao Ming nudged Ning Shu. Ning Shu opened his eyes and asked, "What's wrong?" "I just wanted to see if you were asleep," Xiao Ming said. Ning Shu was speechless. Now, Xiao Ming could speak fluently and think like a human. Ning Shu still decided to go back and cause trouble for Lone Wolf and Young Phoenix. Little Ming didn't say anything and followed Ning Shu around. He was so deep in thought that no one knew what he was thinking. "Flower, do you think I can build a base like the humans?" Little Ming Ning Shu asked. Ning Shu firmly patted Xiao Ming's shoulder and said, "If you want to do it, then do it. I support you." A convulsive smile appeared on Xiao Ming's face. Ning Shu silently turned his head away from his face. "What's the point of building a base? Are you going to put a bunch of zombies that have no consciousness but only appetite in the base?" Just thinking about it made him feel that it was too beautiful to look at. "When the time comes, we can gather the smart monsters like us," Xiao Ming said. Ning Shu was stunned for a moment. Building a place where mutated zombies gather, Xiao Ming really dared to think about it. "Okay." Ning Shu agreed. Xiao Ming was very happy and started to write and draw on the ground. Ning Shu said, "How about we directly attack a base and make it our base?" Ning Shu, "Okay." Xiao Ming, "How many mutated zombies do you think our base will have in the future?" Ning Shu, "A lot." Ning Shu looked at Xiao Ming's serious face. Sure enough, men have the ambition to expand their territory. Ding, mission completed. Do you want to leave the mission world? The system that hadn't appeared for a long time finally made a sound. Ning Shu was dazed for a moment and immediately left the mission world. Ning Shu's heart suddenly surged with disappointment. Before leaving, he didn't see the school doctor again. It was already a miracle to meet him twice. Maybe he wouldn't meet him again in the future. "Uncle, thank you." Ning Shu was dazed for a moment. In a daze, he heard Xiao Ming call Hua Hua, Hua Hua. When Ning Shu opened his eyes again, he was already in the vast white space of the system. Ning Shu took a deep breath and then heavily exhaled, as if to let out the turbid air in his heart. Ning Shu looked down at his soul. It was a little dim. "Congratulations, player has returned to the system space. Do you want to check the status panel?" The cold mechanical voice sounded. "Yes." After Ning Shu finished speaking, his information appeared in front of him. Number, 23333 Name, Ning Shu Age, 27 Experience, 8600, 8600/10,000, Soul, 601 Life, 501 Wisdom, 80 Charm, 1 Luck, 283 Spirit, 120 Martial Strength, 10 Qualifications, 26 Merit, 2 Skills, 5 Ring Shooting Technique, Trash Fighting Technique, Absolute Martial Arts Entry Trash. Honorable Title, Goddess of War Mission Completion, 100. Obtained 5,000 points. Obtained 10 attribute points. Please distribute as you wish. Ning Shu saw that the points this time were actually 5,000 points. That was a lot. Then Ning Shu guessed that it was because he saved the commanding officer that he obtained so many points. Ning Shu added the 10 attribute points to Wisdom, Charm, and Luck. Then, the information on the panel changed. Number, 23333 Name, Ning Shu Age, 27 Experience, 13600, 13600/10,000, Soul, 61 Life, 50 Wisdom, 805 Charm, 12 Luck, 313 Spirit, 120 Martial Strength, 10 Qualifications, 26 Merit, 2 Skills, 5 Ring Shooting Technique, Trash Fighting Technique, Absolute Martial Arts Entry Trash. Honorable Title, Goddess of War, congratulations player for completing the beginner 10,000 points mission. You are now an official player. After the system finished speaking, the sound of firecrackers rang out in the system space, accompanied by a song. Pleasant sheep, beautiful sheep, lazy sheep, Ning Shu was speechless. The system was definitely broken. After the song was finished, the system said, the system needs to be upgraded. Do you want to clear the mission points to upgrade the system? Clear the mission points to 0. 10,000 points to upgrade the system. Ning Shu thought for a moment and said, no. Ning Shu's heart ached for the mission points. You must upgrade. After becoming an official player, you have to deal with more things. The system is too low level and will drag you down. Also, the upgraded system will be more intelligent. The system said. Damn, it's mandatory. Then what are you talking about? Ning Shu gritted his teeth and said, upgrade the system. Please wait, the system is upgrading. Ning Shu's heart ached. A few world points in exchange for an upgraded system. Who knows what kind of system it is? The system was upgrading. Ning Shu also sat down and began to absorb the unknown substance in the space to enrich his soul. Ding, the system upgrade is complete. Ning Shu opened his eyes and looked around. It was still a vast expanse of white. Nothing had changed. System sir, you're still here. Hello, I am System 2333. I am very happy to serve you. A voice rang out in the space. This voice was not as cold as the previous system. Ning Shu was very angry and shouted, why is it still 2333 2333 your sister? Chapter 120. Why was it 2333? Ning Shu did not like the title of 2333. He thought that he would be able to get rid of 2333 after his internship ended. But now that the system called itself 2333, Ning Shu wanted to vomit blood. 2333 is at your service. From today onwards, 2333 is the player's exclusive system. 2333 is required to serve the player in all aspects, including the player's mental state. When the player is unhappy, 2333 is responsible for making the player happy. When the player is happy, 2333 is responsible for making the player happy. Ning Shu was speechless. Why did he have a bad feeling about this? He would rather have the cold and emotionless system than this weird one. Ning Shu rubbed his forehead and said, that, 2333, is there anything the player needs? 2333 quickly said. He was like a small employee who was eager to impress his boss. Explain the situation to me first. Ning Shu said. What situation? 2333 asked. I am now an official player. I want to know the situation of the other players. Ning Shu suppressed the anger in his heart. He spent more than 10,000 points to exchange for this piece of trash. Ning Shu was really frustrated. 2333 seemed to have sensed that Ning Shu was not too happy. He quickly said, the player does not have the right to know the situation of the other players. Then what can I know? Ning Shu squinted his eyes and asked. You can know your quest and the origin of the system. 2333 said, the reason why players are chosen is that their souls are stronger than ordinary people. They can withstand the damage caused by teleportation. The player's job is to help those who have great resentment and have sacrificed their souls or important things to turn their lives around. The player's job is to repair the plane, the tinkerer of the world. 2333 said. Ning Shu nodded and said, I understand. Oh right, is there a secret book that can cultivate the soul? I feel that my soul is still too weak. When it came to things like the soul, the stronger the better. There is, but the player does not have points. You can't exchange for it. 2333 said. Fuck, I really want to choke 2333's neck and make it spit out the points. I feel like this system is useless. Right, what do you look like? Come out and let me have a look, Ning Shu said. Player, I don't have a physical body. I am the mastermind of this space. 2333 said. Fuck, I wanted to beat it up to vent my anger. By the way, after becoming an official player, you will receive a special quest. It is to identify the behavior of the player's family members. In the future, when you assign quests, try to match the player's personality. 2333 said. Sure, Ning Shu said. Do you want to complete the special mission now? There's no rush. The player needs to meet the client first. 2333 said. Ning Shu felt awkward hearing 2333 calling him a player, so he said, you can just call him by his name, Ning Shu. Okay, Ning Shu. 2333 replied cheerfully and asked, do you want to meet the client now? Okay. As soon as Ning Shu's voice fell, a figure slowly appeared in the space. The soul was a little thin, just like Ning Shu's soul. It was an ancient woman wearing ancient clothing. She had a rough hairpin on her head and the fabric on her body was not very good. Her face was very pale, but she was very beautiful. Her body was graceful, soft, and slender. Ning Shu guessed that this woman knew how to dance. The woman first looked around and then looked at Ning Shu. She looked up and down at Ning Shu with a proud expression and said, are you the one who turned the tide for me? Me? Ning Shu said, I am. And you are? I am Madam Qi. When the woman said her identity, she straightened her back and looked very proud. Ning Shu was dumbfounded. Looking at this woman who called herself Madam Qi, he felt like he should know her, but he really didn't know this Madam Qi. 2333 reminded Ning Shu, you are the Madam Qi who was made into a human swine in history. Oh. Ning Shu suddenly realized and asked, haven't you been dead for 2,000 years? A person who had been dead for more than 1,800 years was standing in front of him. Although she was just a soul, Ning Shu felt very surprised. I don't want to. I don't want to be made into a human swine by that evil woman Lu Ji. Do you know how painful it is? When Madam Qi talked about human swine, her face twitched and her soul trembled. Human swine was a kind of torture that turned people into pigs. It was to chop off their limbs, gouge out their eyes, inject copper into their ears to make them deafened, pour poison down their throats, cut off their tongues, and destroy their vocal cords so that they couldn't speak. Then, they were thrown into the toilet. Some had to cut off their noses, shave their hair, and shave their eyebrows, not only their eyebrows and hair, but also their eyelashes. Then, a medicine was applied to destroy their hair follicles. After the hair follicles fell off, they would no longer grow hair. Then, they would be pulled out one by one. Some were too tired, so they would be pulled out together. If their skin fell off, they would die during the execution. Those who didn't die were put in the toilet and made into human swine. The most famous one was that Empress Dowager Lu of the Han Dynasty had made Madam Qi into a human swine. She had even arranged for someone to take care of her before throwing her in the toilet and letting her die in pain. Her ears were cut off, and even her face was scratched. This was a kind of torture invented by Empress Lu to deal with Madam Qi. Ning Shu looked at Madam Qi and asked, then what do you want? Hatred burst out of Madam Qi's eyes as she said fiercely, I want Empress Lu to taste the pain of being made into a human swine. My son, Rui, was still so young, but he was killed by that woman. Ning Shu looked at Madam Qi's twisted face and said indifferently, you can go. I won't accept this mission. Madam Qi was stunned. Why? As long as you help me counterattack, I will give you half of my soul power. 2333 also said, Ning Shu, why? The main reason was that Ning Shu didn't want to go against Empress Lu, a woman who had been in power for more than 10 years. This woman was ruthless and cunning. Secondly, Ning Shu didn't have a good impression of Madame Qi, and he didn't have a good impression of Liu Bang, the rogue emperor. Liu Bang was exactly the kind of person who was called a scumbag. Although Madame Qi's end was very miserable, Ning Shu didn't sympathize with her at all. It was completely self-inflicted. She was ambitious and didn't have the strength to match it. This had always been the case in the harem. 2333, can you reject this mission? I don't want to do this mission, Ning Shu said through the system. Yes, but you can't reject the next mission, 2333 said. Madame Qi's soul began to dim. She was probably going to leave the system space. Ning Shu roared, why? Why can't you counterattack for me? Do I deserve to be tortured by that vicious woman, Empress Lu? I don't want to. I don't want to. Chapter 121. When Madame Qi heard that Ning Shu refused to help her, her face twisted. Ning Shu shouted bitterly, why? Ning Shu said indifferently, your son, Lu Rui, was killed by you. As a mother, you don't know how to protect your son. You only care about glory and wealth. No, Rui was killed by Lu Zhijiu. Madame Qi heard Ning Shu's words and refuted fiercely. Although your son can't be the emperor, he is still a prince. However, you want to uphold justice for your son. It would be strange if Lu Zhijiu let your son go. Ning Shu said indifferently. After Liu Bang's death, Madame Qi was forced by Lu Zhijiu to wear prison clothes and iron shackles. She was locked in Yongchun Alley and pounded rice day and night. Madame Qi couldn't stand it anymore and made a song. She wanted her son to uphold justice for her and leave here. Madame Qi's soul became dimmer and dimmer. It was estimated that she was about to leave the system space and disappear completely. The system echoed Madame Qi's roar. It's not like that. It's not like that at all. Ning Shu let out a long breath. Ning Shu didn't want to care about this kind of mess. Also, Ning Shu was definitely on the side of the legal wife. Even if it was reasonable and legal in ancient times, Ning Shu was still very disgusted. As a rich young lady, Lu Zhijiu married Liu Bang, who had nothing. She washed and cooked for Liu Bang and gave birth to children for him. She was not beautiful and was even captured by Xiang Yu as a hostage for 2 years. She waited bitterly for Liu Bang, but Liu Bang and Madame Qi were like gods. Madame Qi enjoyed glory and favor. Lu Zhijiu had nothing but the position of empress. Madame Qi was ambitious. She encouraged Liu Bang to depose the crown prince and make her son the crown prince. LVG was vicious and merciless, but she had changed from a pampered, intelligent, and innocent young girl to this. Behind every heartless and ruthless woman, there was a heartless man. Too much hurt, disappointment, and despair had turned a soft heart into a cold and hard iron. If it was Ning Shu himself, he would do the same. He would kill Liu Bang first. This kind of ungrateful grassroots emperor was simply too disgusting. Let's look at the next quest. Ning Shu said. 2333 quickly said, Ning Shu, you can't reject this mission. No matter what kind of mission it is, you must accept it. Okay, I got it. Ning Shu nodded. As soon as Ning Shu's voice fell, a figure slowly appeared in the space. When the figure gradually became clear, Ning Shu was stunned when he saw the soul. It was a woman, a very beautiful woman. Her soul seemed to be stronger than Lu Zhi's soul. It was like a real person standing in front of Ning Shu. Her appearance was dazzling and captivating. The fabric of her clothes was excellent. There was no wind in the space, but the clothes on her body seemed to be fluttering, giving people the feeling that she was floating in the air like an immortal. This was the first time Ning Shu had seen such a beautiful woman. Her face was pure and innocent, but her body was very hot. Her waist was very thin, and the belt she wore made her chest even more turbulent. With such good looks, there was no hurdle that couldn't be overcome. As the saying goes, 3 points of fate, 7 points of hard work, and 90 points of appearance. Like cannon fodder, she could just grow as long as she wanted. Ning Shu felt that this woman was not simple. He didn't know why, but he had a bad feeling. The woman who entered the space looked around, then looked at Ning Shu and said, "You are the one who will counterattack for me." Her voice was very soft. When Ning Shu heard this voice, he shivered. She was a woman, and when she heard this voice, she couldn't control herself, let alone a man. Her voice was filled with charm. It was soft and carried a hint of innocence. It was simply too alluring. "I am." Ning Shu nodded and said. Hearing Ning Shu's words, the woman quickly walked towards Ning Shu. Ning Shu looked at the woman in front of him. Her body was slightly swaying, and her waist was so thin that Ning Shu was afraid that she would break it. The woman reached out and held Ning Shu's hand, and shouted, "Elder sister, help me." Ning Shu looked at the flawless face in front of him. Ning Shu's mouth was dry, and he asked, "How can I help you? I beg you to help me. I don't want to be reincarnated. I really can't stand it. I would rather be reincarnated. If elder sister can counterattack for me and let me escape the fate of reincarnation, Yen Luo is willing to give up all of my soul force. I just want to be reincarnated." Ning Shu heard Yen Luo's words, and his heart suddenly thumped. There was no such thing as a free lunch in this world. He asked, "Speak clearly." "My name is Mu Yen Luo. I am the daughter of a country's prime minister." Mu Yen Luo said. She was a perfect example of a rich and beautiful woman. "My mission is to get rid of those men. I've really had enough of those men. I've been reborn 3 times. I thought I could get rid of these men, but I can't. I wanted to escape the first time I was reborn, but I still fell into the hands of those men. The second time I was reborn, I wanted to hang myself, but I was still saved by those men. Just like in my first life, I'm still entangled with those men. Living 3 lives, no wonder her soul force was so strong." Mu Yen Luo looked at Ning Shu with eyes full of hope and expectation. "Elder sister, I want to get rid of this fate. Of course, it would be better if you could teach those men a lesson." Ning Shu's mouth twitched, and he asked, "How many men are entangled with you?" Mu Yen Luo's eyes were very clear, and she said, "Several." Ning Shu was speechless. "So, what kind of mission was this?" 2333, "I don't want to accept this mission," Ning Shu said to the system. "No, you refused the last mission. You can't refuse this one," 2333 said. "Otherwise, Ning Shu will be obliterated." Ning Shu was speechless. Ning Shu turned his head, and Mu Yen Luo said with a ferocious expression, "I accept this mission. Thank you, elder sister." Mu Yen Luo's face lit up with a smile, and she looked even more beautiful than before. It felt like the whole room was lit up by her smile. She was so damn beautiful. Mu Yen Luo was very happy to hear Ning Shu accept the mission. Before she left, Ning Shu said, "Elder sister, you are a good person. The others don't want to accept my mission, or they failed it. Thank you. Ning Shu, come back. Let's talk about it." After Mu Yen Luo left, Ning Shu felt even worse. He asked 2333, "What's going on?" Mu Yen Luo is the female lead of a world, 2333 said. It's just that she's been reborn twice, and she doesn't want to live the life of being reborn anymore. So, she's looking for players to counterattack. She's the female lead, and I'm just a cannon fodder. What the hell am I supposed to counterattack? Ning Shu said in a huff. Chapter 122. She was supposed to be the cannon fodder, but now she was going to be the heroine's counterattack. 2333 said, I told you this is a special mission. After this mission, you can only be cannon fodder. Damn it. How could it be so direct? It even said that it had to take care of the player's emotions. This was how the system took care of people. Ning Shu sat down and began to absorb the materials and the space to enrich his soul. When he had points, he would immediately exchange them for the secret book of soul cultivation. This was too slow. After some time, Ning Shu opened his eyes and saw that his soul had been enriched a lot. He was very satisfied and asked, 2333, are you still there? Yes. As soon as Ning Shu's voice fell, 2333's voice sounded. Obviously, he had been waiting for Ning Shu to wake up. Ning Shu said, can you change your name? 2333 said, no, my main brain has been with this number since birth. It can't be changed. Ning Shu thought, what the hell? He felt that this number was full of malice. Forget it, there was no need to care about these trivial things. Ning Shu said, let's enter the mission. Okay. In an instant, Ning Shu felt that his head was heavy and his feet were light. He felt dizzy and wanted to vomit. When this feeling disappeared, Ning Shu opened his eyes. The room was very dark. There were candles on the table and a maid was sleeping on the recliner. She was probably on night watch. Ning Shu rubbed his head and looked out the window. It was very dark now. Ning Shu decided to accept the plot first. Prime Minister Mu of Donghua Nation had a daughter named Mu Yenluo. She was born with a natural charm and was devastatingly beautiful. Many people had come to propose marriage to her, wondering who could win her heart. But what was unexpected was that Donghua Nation was destroyed overnight. The Prime Minister's residence was attacked. Prime Minister Mu told his daughter to escape, and then he fled in the opposite direction. Mu Yenluo, who had just escaped from the Prime Minister's residence, was caught by a general. Then, the general raped her and started a shameless life. Mu Yenluo gradually gave her heart to the general, but then a lord took a fancy to Mu Yenluo. However, the general directly gave Mu Yenluo to the lord. Mu Yenluo was so heartlessly tortured by the general that her heart, liver, spleen, lungs, and kidneys were all moved. Then she and the lord started a love-hate relationship. I don't love you. You can have my body, but you can't have my heart. The general, who lost Mu Yenluo, found out that he loved Mu Yenluo. The general negotiated with the lord, and then something even more shameful. Ning Shu, Mu Yenluo was heartbroken. She ran away and met many men along the way. There were imperial merchants, divine doctors, martial arts alliance chiefs, scholars, and demonic sect leaders. Towards the end of the story, these men all fell in love with Mu Yenluo. After a discussion, they decided to share Mu Yenluo and live a more shameless life. Fuck. Ning Shu shuddered at the sight of this string of people. Most importantly, every man Mu Yenluo passed by was tormented both physically and mentally. Then, the men would come to their senses and realize that the one they loved was Mu Yenluo. They no longer had any feelings for other women. It was heartbreaking, miscarriages, misunderstandings, and physical abuse. It was simply too tragic. This was a world of NP meat. It was a world of literary abuse. No wonder Mu Yenluo was able to counterattack. After experiencing such a life 3 times, these men were definitely masochistic, and Mu Yenluo was definitely a masochist. Even in such a situation, they could still live happily together. Ning Shu counted with his fingers how many men there were. The valiant general, the overbearing lord, the black-bellied imperial merchant, the indifferent divine doctor, the coquettish sect leader, the righteous leader, and the scholar. Well, there were 7 in total. 1 night per person, just enough for a week. Ning Shu wanted to go home. This world of filth. Ding. Ning Shu, Mwax, I am 2333. A voice suddenly appeared in Ning Shu's mind. Lost in thought, Ning Shu almost jumped out of bed. What is it? Ning Shu asked coldly. Mwax. Ha ha ha. 2333 didn't waste any time and said, since you are helping Mu Yenluo to escape her fate, you can't let these men take advantage of her. Mu Yenluo's 3 lives have been tortured by these men. So Ning Shu, if you want to get more points, you better torture these men too. The higher the torture, the more points you will get. This mission is difficult because the rules of heaven and earth are strong. Mu Yenluo is set in stone. Even if she is reborn, she can't escape her fate. 2333 explained. Ning Shu suddenly understood. It was like a tape that had been put on. It could only follow the plot. But if the plot deviated, the rules of heaven and earth would soon return to the starting point. Ning Shu felt a sudden pressure. Damn, why was the mission so difficult? Could it be that she picked the leftovers of others? Fuck. All in all, this mission was to change Mu Yenluo's fate. Moreover, he had to torture these men. Of course, if he didn't kill these scumbags, would he keep them for the new year? Ning Shu sat up on the bed and prepared to practice his peerless martial arts. Without strength, he could only be slept with. Ning Shu didn't want to be slept with by these men. After a long time, Ning Shu sat on the bed and took a deep breath. Ning Shu sadly found that this body couldn't practice martial arts at all. After practicing for almost 4 hours, Ning Shu found that there was no qi in his body. Ning Shu was so anxious that he started to sweat. Without strength, how could he just wait to be raped by these men? Ning Shu expressed that he was a pure person. How could he do such a thing? This body can't practice martial arts. Ning Shu, give up, give up. 2333's voice echoed in Ning Shu's mind. His heart was tired. That's right, the female lead just had to wait to be raped. After practicing her peerless martial arts, she would be incomparably powerful. How could she be raped by men? A soft body was easy to be pushed over. A little resistance was fun, but it was impossible for the female lead to possess great strength. Ning Shu sat on the bed and sighed. Suddenly, the door was kicked open with a bang. Ning Shu was startled. The maidservant who was sleeping on the recliner was so frightened by the loud noise that she fell to the ground. She got up from the ground at a loss and saw Ning Shu sitting on the bed. She shouted, Miss, what's wrong? How the hell would I know what's going on? Ning Shu looked at the door. A man walked in with a group of people behind him. Yenluo, the army is attacking the city. Let's hurry and leave. A handsome middle-aged man walked in. Ning Shu said anxiously. So it was the original owner's father. He thought it was the general who attacked the city. Ning Shu still hadn't calmed down. Why aren't you packing up for the young miss? Prime Minister Mu shouted at the pale-faced servant. The servant hurriedly packed up. Prime Minister Mu looked at Ning Shu and sighed. Donghua has fallen. Ning Shu also sighed. This was the beginning of the original owner's tragedy. Father, where are we going? Ning Shu didn't think he could escape. The plot was quite powerful. Chapter 123. The sky of the apocalypse was gray, and the whole world seemed to be shrouded in dust. Viruses and zombies roared, and the whole environment was filled with despair, greed, and the infinite magnification of human nature. The law of the jungle was that the strong were respected. Struggling to survive, the strong became stronger, and the weak were eliminated. In front of the base, there were zombies roaring without reason in all directions, and crazily rushing toward the base. Human and human-like zombies were floating in the air above the base. Young Phoenix looked at Hua Duo and scolded, Hua Duo, do you have any shame? You come here every day to attack our base. What do you want? Xiao Ming, who was in a suit, stood next to Hua Duo, Xiao Ming ignored young Phoenix and turned to Hua Duo and said, Hua Duo move aside. I'll deal with this woman. Hua Duo shook her head and looked at young Phoenix. She said, I'll do it myself. Young Phoenix pushed her into a group of zombies and wanted to kill her, so she went against Hua Duo. Hua Duo only remembered being pushed into a group of zombies when they found the gene fluid. She didn't know how she became a zombie, and there was a zombie called Xiao Ming beside her. She didn't know who gave him the name, but Xiao Ming said she gave him the name. Hua Duo said she wouldn't give him such a name. Xiao Ming might as well be called Xiao Dong. Xiao Ming nodded and said to Hua Duo, if you can't beat her, run. Don't fight with this woman. She's stronger than before. I'll run. Hua nodded. Although Xiao Ming was a zombie, he was very black-bellied and was a thick-skinned person. Young Phoenix, you pushed me into a group of zombies. I'll take revenge today. Hua Duo raised her fist and punched young Phoenix. Young Phoenix sneered, you're just lucky to become a mutated zombie, and you think you've become Superman. No matter what you become, you're useless. You're just giving me nuclei. Hua Duo didn't say anything. She dodged young Phoenix's icicles and fought with young Phoenix. Hua Duo couldn't understand. They were all from the special agent team, and they were all trained by the officer. How could young Phoenix and Lone Wolf attack the officer? He was simply a human-faced beast. You're nothing but a slut. You're even called a goddess by others. Don't you feel guilty? Why are you pretending to be so pure? Hua Duo cursed as she fought with young Phoenix. Young Phoenix's eyes turned red when she heard Flower's words. This was because she had to sacrifice her body when she was doing quests. It was not even her first time. In order to complete quests, this was necessary. In the past, young Phoenix did not care, but now that she was the goddess of the base, young Phoenix was very concerned about such a dark history. She was now a strong person of the base, so how could she have such an imperfect history? Hua, if you continue to talk nonsense, do you believe that I will tear your mouth off? Young Phoenix said through gritted teeth. Especially when she saw the strange look in the eyes of the people around her, young Phoenix gritted her teeth and looked at Flower Duo, with resentment. Hua, smiled as she looked at the angry young Phoenix. When she saw young Phoenix send out dense and large icicles, she quickly dodged and shouted to Xiao Ming, I can't beat her. Let's run. Xiao Ming was fighting with Lone Wolf. Then, he turned around and ran. He pulled Hua and ran quickly. In an instant, they were out of sight. Young Phoenix was so angry that her face turned red. Looking at Hua, who ran away, she was so angry that she started to bombard the zombies below. Hua, if I don't kill you, I, young Phoenix, am not human. Young Phoenix was almost angered to death by Hua, For no reason, she would bring a large wave of zombies to harass the base. When the situation was not right, she would immediately run away. Lone Wolf frowned and said to young Phoenix, this zombie and Hua even built a base. It seems that the one just now should be the zombie king. Young Phoenix was even angrier. This is so annoying. Moreover, the base built by Hua and the zombie king was not far from here. Young Phoenix felt that Hua did it on purpose. However, humans were no match for the endless and tireless zombies. Otherwise, young Phoenix would have attacked them long ago. Xiao Ming and Hua ran for a while and stopped. Then, they slowly walked towards the base. Hua saw a car parked not far in front of them. A person leaned against the car door and looked up at her and Xiao Ming. His expression was very cold. He wore a pair of gold-rimmed glasses on the bridge of his nose. He was tall and slender, and his black windbreaker swayed with the breeze. Hua Duo felt his sharp gaze grazing her face. Hua Duo even had the feeling that she was being seen through. Hua could feel that this man was not a psychic, but he had a deep and unfathomable temperament. Roar! Xiao Ming roared at the school doctor. He looked at him warily. After a moment of hesitation, he was ready to pounce on the school doctor and take out his heart. Hua grabbed Xiao Ming, who was about to rush over. Xiao Ming turned his head and looked at Hua. Hua said, "He didn't attack us. Let's let him go." Xiao Ming frowned. In the end, he did not make a move. However, he looked at the person leaning against the car with a serious expression. His muscles were trembling, ready to attack at any time. "Let's go." Hua pulled Xiao Ming away. She looked back at the man. He slightly pushed the glasses on the bridge of his nose. Under the sunlight, the glasses reflected a white light. The school doctor raised his eyebrows and finally sneered. He opened the car door and started the car. The car kicked up a cloud of dust. After a while, the car disappeared. Hua sighed in relief when they were far away from the strange man. Although she did not know why, she felt uncomfortable when she saw the man. Xiao Ming and Hua walked into the base. This base was built by Xiao Ming. It was filled with mutated zombies. Seeing Xiao Ming and Hua the mutated zombies all knelt on the ground to show their allegiance. The law of the jungle among zombies was clearer than among humans. Hua that man seemed to know you. Xiao Ming thought about it and felt that the man should know Hua Hua shook her head and said, "I don't know him." Humans and zombies fought each other for survival. Hua was at odds with Lone Wolf and Young Phoenix. Lone Wolf, who was angry, also organized people to fight back. In short, you hit me, I hit you. Xiao Ming's strength was getting stronger. He did not seem to like eating hearts. He always gave the corpses of psychics to the zombies below. Xiao Ming was becoming more and more like a normal person. No one could tell that he was a zombie just by looking at his appearance. Perhaps he was already a human, a high-level human. Chapter 124. Also, why do we have to run? Can't we just surrender? Ning Shu asked. With Prime Minister Mu's status in Donghua, there was still a way out if they surrendered. Prime Minister Mu's handsome face stiffened. Ning Shu said sternly, "Your father is a scholar. How can I do something so unprincipled?" Ning Shu was speechless. If they were really unprincipled, why did they have to run? They might as well stay and live and die with Donghua. They would definitely be famous in history. They would be proud and unyielding. They would be afraid of losing their lives if they stayed. "Master, miss, everything is packed." The little maid held the package in her arms. Ning Shu did not want to go with Prime Minister Mu. He said, "Father, you and mother go first. We will go in different directions." "That's fine. We are a family. When can we meet again? If we are separated in this chaotic world, we might not be able to see each other before we die." Prime Minister Mu frowned. Obviously, he agreed with Ning Shu's suggestion. Ning Shu said, "Father, mother, go with big brother and little brother first. This way, the Mu family will have a bloodline." "I won't go with you." Prime Minister Mu thought for a moment and said, "That's fine." Ning Shu was speechless. "You are really big. Aren't you worried about leaving your daughter behind?" It was probably because of the plot. Thinking about it, any scene would be sex. His father-in-law was watching from the side. What was this? In the plot, Mu Yenluo was all alone. "Take these banknotes." Prime Minister Mu took out a stack of banknotes and gave them to Ning Shu. Ning Shu accepted the banknotes and said, "Thank you, father. Father will give you one more person to protect you. This is my guard. He will protect you secretly in the future." Prime Minister Mu pointed to a guard holding a sword. Ning Shu looked at the guard. This guard looked very special. He had a square face and a wide chin. There was no such guard in the plot. Ning Shu recalled the plot and found that the guard had appeared once before, but he didn't appear after that. He either ran away on his own or was secretly killed by the male lead. He will protect you in secret. This girl will also follow you. Prime Minister Mu hurriedly finished his words. Then, he looked at Ning Shu with sorrowful eyes. Daughter, father is leaving. You must take care of yourself. The army is coming. Hurry up and run. As soon as Prime Minister Mu spoke, he ran out of sight. The guard glanced at Ning Shu and then jumped out of the window. He was probably going to protect her in the dark. It felt unreliable. Ning Shu put away the silver that Prime Minister Mu gave him and then said to the servant girl who was holding the package, "You can go too. You don't have to follow me. This servant is by Mrs. side. This servant is not afraid." The young maidservant's teeth were chattering and her legs were trembling. Ning Shu sat cross-legged on the bed and said indifferently, "You don't have to follow me. I won't leave. This servant is by Mrs. side. Yulan is Mrs. person. Even if I die, I will be Mrs. Ghost." Yulan said firmly. Ning Shu waved her hand. "Up to you. If you want to follow me, then follow me. Get something to eat. I'm a bit hungry." Ning Shu said to Yulan. Yulan put down the package and went to get something for Ning Shu to eat. Looking out of the window, one could see that the city gate was brightly lit. There were also sounds of killing. The smell of blood drifted far away. The entire capital seemed to be in turmoil. "That guard, are you still there?" Ning Shu shouted out of the window. After waiting for a while, there was no response from the guard. Ning Shu felt depressed. This guy couldn't have run away, right? Here. A voice sounded. Ning Shu, she felt that this guy's reaction arc was a bit long. She called for such a long time before answering. How should I inform you? Did she have to call for him every time? If he didn't respond for a long time, it would be too late. Moreover, Ning Shu didn't know how loyal this guard was. Sigh, so melancholy. A black shadow appeared in front of Ning Shu. His face was covered, only revealing a pair of eyes. Ning Shu was shocked. "Miss, it's me," the guard said. Ning Shu stroked her chest. "Why are you covering your face? This is the rule of us secret guards," the guard said. "Ning Shu, you're like this, forgetting what you look like after a glance. Covering your face is even more eye-catching. This is a whistle. When Miss blows the whistle, I will appear." The guard gave Ning Shu a whistle. Ning Shu took the whistle and asked, "Can I hear it no matter where I am?" This question was a bit difficult. The guard didn't answer for a long time. Finally, he said, "As long as I am by Miss's side, I can hear when Miss blows the whistle." "Thank you." Ning Shu put away the whistle. At least she felt a bit safer. Yulan brought food. Ning Shu said, "Miss, there's no one in the residence now. This servant made some noodles." Ning Shu didn't dislike it. She ate some of the food that Yulan brought and said, "You can also make some food yourself." Ning Shu rubbed her stomach and waited for the general to come. She waited until Ning Shu was about to fall asleep. Finally, someone broke into the Prime Minister's residence. Messy footsteps came over. Pang, the door was kicked open. Then, the door fell to the ground with a creak. It fell to the ground and splashed up dust. It was completely ruined. Ning Shu was speechless. Couldn't they open the door properly? All of them liked to kick the door open. Ning Shu remained silent and sat on the stool without moving. She looked at the man walking at the front. This man was tall and strong, and he was wearing armor. The moment he walked into the room, the entire room was filled with the thick smell of blood. Ning Shu looked at him. This was Mu Yenluo's first man, Situ Qingyu. Wow, General, there's a beauty here. So beautiful, so beautiful. When Ning Shu saw these people looking at her with lustful and disgusting eyes, she cursed in her heart. She had never enjoyed such treatment before. She felt like she had been raped. Sure enough, she was used to being an ugly little cannon fodder. All of you, get out. Situ Qingyu said to the soldiers behind him. His voice was deep and forceful like a powerful army, majestic and cold. Seeing Ning Shu, a great beauty, these soldiers and officers were reluctant to leave. One of them cupped his fists and said, General, this beauty must be the famous beauty Mu Yenluo of Donghua Nation. We have worked hard for the whole night. General, what do you think? I said get lost. Situ Qingyu directly pulled out the big saber at his waist and said coldly, what's wrong? My words don't matter, or do you want to go against the military order? Everyone immediately understood that the general had taken a fancy to this beauty and wanted to have sex with her first. The eyes of the men blocking the door were glued to Ning Shu. They couldn't look away and some of them even drooled. However, with Situ Qingyu around, they couldn't think of this beauty. Situ Qingyu was very powerful and these men were very afraid of him. In the end, they all left reluctantly, leaving Situ Qingyu alone. Chapter 125. After the other soldiers left, Situ Qingyu walked over to Ning Shu and threw the sword on the table. The little girl, Yuelan, was so scared that her legs turned to jelly. She fell to the ground and looked at the fierce Situ Qingyu in shock. Ning Shu's eyelids twitched, but her expression did not change. Damn it, if I could master a peerless martial art, I would whip you to death. Situ Qingyu looked at Ning Shu and let out a low laugh. I didn't expect Miss Mu to be so bold. Were you waiting for me in this embroidery house? Although Situ Qingyu was a general, he was definitely good-looking and handsome. Now, he looked at Ning Shu with undisguised passion and desire. Ning Shu coughed and tried to make her voice sound a little rougher. General, are you going to kill women and children now? Kill you? How could I bear to kill you? As Situ Qingyu said this, he suddenly twitched the saber at his waist. The saber reflected a white light that shone on Ning Shu's face. Situ Qingyu stabbed the saber at Ning Shu's head. Ning Shu did not dodge and just stared at Situ Qingyu in a daze. Miss! Yulan shouted, her face deathly pale. Situ Qingyu glanced at Ning Shu, whose expression did not change. With a flick of his wrist, he took the hairpin in her hair and held it in his hand. Then, he put the hairpin to the tip of his nose and sniffed it. He said in a low and sexy voice, "It smells so good." Ning Shu grinned and did not say anything. She had to maintain a noble and elegant appearance to reduce the seductiveness of her body. Mu Yenluo's body was emitting hormones at any time and anywhere, sending out signals that said, "Come on me, come on me." No man liked a woman with a cold face. Situ Qingyu put the hairpin back into Ning Shu's hair bun. This hairpin suits you best. Aya, he's a master at flirting. In the plot, Situ Qingyu raped Mu Yenluo and was mesmerized by her body. The Prime Minister's residence was a place for pleasure at any time and place. Women would always have some special feelings for their first man. Moreover, after a long time together, Mu Yenluo's heart had been given to Situ Qingyu. Mu Yenluo had thought that Situ Qingyu also loved her. After all, if he didn't love her, how could he roll around with her every day? Moreover, he was so passionate. However, he did not hesitate to give her away as if she was a brothel girl. Mu Yenluo was truly beaten to a pulp. Situ Qingyu saw that the beauty was ignoring him. She was indifferent to whatever he did. Situ Qingyu revealed a faint smile and said lightly, "Interesting, very interesting. Ning Shu, that's a classic line for picking up girls." So, are you going to say, woman, you've successfully attracted my attention? Very well, you've attracted my attention. Situ Qingyu bent over slightly and lowered his head to get closer to Ning Shu. This action was very ambiguous, as if he was going to lean over and kiss her. At the same time, Situ Qingyu had an extremely strong aura and oppression that would make a woman's heart pound wildly. However, in the face of Situ Qingyu's flirting skills, Ning Shu looked up at Situ Qingyu expressionlessly. Situ Qingyu stretched out his head and lifted Ning Shu's chin. Situ Qingyu's face was getting closer and closer, and it looked like he was going to kiss her. TSK, TSK. There was a bloody smell on him. Ning Shu instantly felt that this guy had come back from slaughtering pigs and hadn't even taken a shower. Ning Shu stretched out his fist and punched Situ Qingyu in the eye, only to hit Situ Qingyu's palm. Situ Qingyu looked at Ning Shu with a faint smile and grabbed Ning Shu's fist with his slender and broad hand. I like this frosty look of yours even more. It's even more mesmerizing to see a frosty look turn into a passionate one when you're about to give pleasure. Situ Qingyu's words were lewd, but his handsome face made him look particularly devilish. Ning Shu, damn, he failed to pretend to be noble and cold. Situ Qingyu lowered his head and wanted to kiss the hand in his palm. Ning Shu withdrew his hand and picked up the whistle hanging in front of his chest. He took a deep breath and blew the whistle as loudly as he could. Bang! A black shadow jumped in through the window. He was dressed in black and had a mask on his face. He was very conspicuous in this brightly lit room. Beat him as hard as you can. This bastard dared to take advantage of me. Cut off his penis. Ning Shu pointed at Situ Qingyu and cursed. She didn't look noble and cold at all. Situ Qingyu was stunned for a moment. Obviously, he couldn't figure out why the beauty suddenly changed her style. Situ Qingyu raised his eyebrows and looked at Ning Shu. He said in a low voice, so you have a helper. Beauty, I like to hear you speak. Even if you're cursing, it sounds like you're pleasing me. Ning Shu, damn. Ning Shu wished he could poison himself into a mute. This was the female lead of an erotic novel. It was obviously a very painful thing, but the expression on her face was both joyful and painful. It made men want to torture her even more and tear her apart. Ning Shu pinched her own neck and tried her best to make her voice sound less seductive. She shouted at the secret guard, cut off his dick. Situ Qingyu and the secret guard fought. Sand and stones flew everywhere. The chairs and benches in the room were swept by the aftermath and turned into wreckage. Yuelan's face was pale. She moved to Ning Shu's side and watched the fight. She asked in a trembling voice, Miss, what's a dick? Ning Shu. Plop. A figure fell at Ning Shu's feet. Ning Shu felt uncomfortable when he saw that it was the secret guard. The secret guard stood up with a hand on his chest. Ning Shu said, Miss, this person is not weak. I can't beat him. I'll go and treat my injuries first. With that, the secret guard jumped out of the window and ran away. Damn, you're so useless. What's the point of keeping you? If you want to run, you have to run with your master. Ning Shu pretended to be noble and aloof as she raised her chin and looked at Situ Qingyu. Situ Qingyu's arm was injured and was bleeding profusely. General, what's wrong? A guard outside the door asked. Ning Shu smiled, revealing his white teeth. He said indifferently to the door, it's nothing. The battle was a little intense. Situ Qingyu's words were very ambiguous. The person outside the house immediately let out a wretched laugh and left again. Ning Shu beckoned Situ Qingyu with his finger. Come here and bandage my wound. He didn't know how to bandage a wound. Ning Shu didn't say anything. Since you're not coming over, I'll come over. I'm not just here to bandage my wound. Situ Qingyu said as he asked Ning Shu to come over. Damn it. Ning Shu cursed in his heart and walked toward Situ Qingyu. When he walked, Ning Shu found that his body was habitually twisting his waist. It was completely spontaneous. You're tuning into the Han Li's Wuxia Adventures YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.